This is a special meeting of the Maxwell Heights Board of Education for the purpose of having public participation in the discussion regarding COVID-19 practices for the 2021-2022 school year, and to consider a resolution to allow for such participation at a special meeting, and for the purpose of considering a resolution to approve the recommended hire of certain retired teachers, and for the purpose of considering a resolution to approve other personnel recommendations. The meeting will be live streamed on the district's YouTube channel and directly linked. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Dosen? Yes. Mrs. Kramer? Yes. Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Item 2, board business. A resolution to temporarily amend policy. Roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Item C, beginning the 2021-22 school year, safety protocols and COVID-19 discussion.
Good evening. Mr. Peterson asked me to go over our safety protocols for the 21-22 school year. All of this information will get posted to our website and it'll be available for you to review after this meeting. So I wanted to share a little bit what is going on legislatively, which has happened between the end of last school year and the start of this school year, and some legislation that perhaps will take place starting in October. Back in June, as you know, was our last day of school for last year, and all of the previous health orders that were in place were lifted on that day. On June 21st, we started our summer school and our ESY program. We had approximately over 400 kids within those two programs participating in those services where no health orders were in play. Students had the option of wearing masks if they wanted to. We had 0 incidents of COVID over the summer for those 2-week period with those over 300 students. On June 23rd, a Senate Bill 22 passed and will take effect on October 13th. I'm sorry, wrong bill. So, Senate Bill 22 is in effect, which limits the authority of our governor, our Ohio Department of Health director, and director of health from issuing any health orders. So when we look at what was ordered last year, the General Assembly got together and passed Senate Bill 22, and they limited the authority for the governor or the Ohio Department of Health to issue such orders moving forward without going through committee and going through a different process. And most recently, House Bill 244 was recently passed, and should the FDA not fully approve the COVID vaccine, because right now the COVID vaccine is not fully FDA approved. It is partially so that it allowed for it to be delivered in an emergency fashion, but it's not fully approved. And if it's not fully approved by October 13th, House Bill 244 prohibits public schools from requiring individuals to get vaccinations that are not fully approved. So that the law only pertains to those vaccinations that are fully approved by the FDA or not approved by the FDA. And it prohibits us from requiring unvaccinated people to refrain from or engage in activities or precautions that differ from vaccinated people. So in other words, we can't treat anyone who's vaccinated or unvaccinated differently should the COVID vaccine not be fully FDA approved by that date. The CDC order on masking on public transportation does include school buses. I know that sounds silly, but the CDC describes any vehicle that is used as a conveyance vehicle. That's why we still have to wear masks on airplanes and public transportation and any type of transit. School buses are within that federal order, which is why masks are still required on our school buses. So we put together this one pager. Like I said, it'll be available to you on our website for you to have after this meeting. And we tried to cover, make it bigger. We tried to give you just a quick reference guide on facial coverings. We will continue to evaluate all the protocols just as we did last year and the guidelines that are set forth by the Ohio Department of Health, the CDC, and Cuyahoga County Board of Health. Under the current guidance, the practice of wearing facial coverings is strongly recommended, but not required. And the mask should be worn by all individuals regardless of vaccination status within the context of a school building. This is consistent, and constant use of face masking will be important for those who are wearing those, because it will have an impact on quarantine, which I will go over with you after we go through this document. Transportation, as I just said, the CDC's most recent order still requires masking on school buses because of the federal order and the definition of school buses being a conveyance vehicle. Hand washing and sanitation we're still going to be encouraging kids to wash hands. There will still be sanitizing stations located throughout the buildings, and encouragement for all students to continue to use sanitation and washing hands all throughout our buildings. Social distancing we still will be facing classrooms as to the fullest extent possible that we can. There will be signage and guidelines and expectations that will be displayed. We have an alternate plan for specifically lunch at the high school to utilize another area of the school so that we can spread kids out to maximum capacity in the lunchroom, since we do have a large gathering of kids that eat at the same time. A similar plan is also being implemented at the middle school. Certainly when the weather is nice, we will also encourage kids to eat outside as well. We do expect to continue to clean the way we've been cleaning our buildings. We will have to do our part to ensure that all the high touch areas are sanitized. We had a protocol last year. We plan to continue that protocol of wiping down door handles, wiping down desks, having sanitation wipes available in all the classrooms for kids to use and staff to use as they see necessary. Wellness checks, as you remember, for last year, we were doing temperature taking at the beginning of the year. We put that back on the home and said, monitor your own students for us and monitor your own children. So we would expect you to self-monitor and the kids to self-monitor to make sure that they are symptom-free prior to starting their school day. We are absolutely encouraging any staff member and or student who is not feeling well to stay home. Just as we did last year, if we're sick, if you're experiencing any types of symptoms, we would like you to stay home. And if kids during the course of the day, just as what happened this year, kids during the course of the day, if they're not feeling well, they are to report it to their teacher first, and then down to the school nurse, where we can then check for symptoms and notify parents immediately should kids not be feeling well. Next page. Contact tracing, we are still required to do contact tracing. So if a student is considered a close contact, we will be contact tracing, turning those names over. We're required to do so within 24 hours unless it falls on a Friday and over the weekend. It is the next business day. We do, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health has a portal. We have to upload information. We will still be reporting cases of COVID that we know about on our website, so you can look at that. Last year, we updated that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We will continue to update that site on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays to keep you informed of the cases that are going on in our district. Vaccinations obviously are strongly recommended. Already talked a little bit about House Bill 244 and what will happen should that vaccine not be fully federally approved by that date of October 13th. Remote learning, we believe that our students benefit the most from in-person learning, and so 100% remote learning will not be offered. We did have an option through ODE to open up a whole separate online school, which required us to provide internet service, free internet service, and computers to all students that would take advantage of that. They are reported differently, and it would be another category on our state report card. At the current time, we only had about 7 families that have expressed interest in that. We've reached out to all of those families individually to talk through their individual situations with them. Non-essential visitors and volunteers at our school, we are still going to limit the number of volunteers that will be permitted in the school during the day and the number of groups. We are allowing our PSO to meet at the school sites, but other than parties remains to be seen. We're going to continue to monitor the situation to see where we are to determine whether or not we are going to allow parents to come in for our 3 annual parties that we have each year during the school year. Teachers and classes will be reminded to consider outdoor learning opportunities, just like we did last year. Have students be outside as much as they possibly can. We will update our decision-making protocols as new procedures. As you've seen, ODH came out with several different guidance documents over the last few weeks, and we continue to update those as needed. We will make sure that they are posted in a timely manner to our website so that you have the latest and greatest information on what some of those decision-making protocols would be. And we will closely monitor all cases and make appropriate decisions to stakeholders that are involved in those decisions. We also had our administrative retreat last week where we talked to our administrative team about the no tolerance. We will have 0 tolerance. People choose to wear masks to school, that's their choice and that's their family's choice. If people don't wear masks to school, there will absolutely be no bullying around the idea of wearing face masks or deciding not to wear a face mask. It's strictly a family's decision to do so. In addition, new quarantine guidance has come out, and again, I'm going to emphasize the word guidance on this. What they are saying now, we want you to have as much information as you can when you make your decision about your students. So masking, quarantining is changing from anybody that was in a close contact with quarantine. It's all going to be based on not so much your vaccinated status, but more on whether or not you were masking. So, long story short, if your student is wearing a mask and is exposed and considered a close contact and they were wearing a mask, they do not need to quarantine. If your child is not wearing a mask and depending on identification of being a close contact, they may or may not have to quarantine. The quarantine options for us this year were what they ended up being at the end of last year. So we started off the year with 14 days of quarantine should your child be exposed. They then came up with a choice of 10 days with a negative test or 7 with a negative test after the 5th day. So those would be the options should your student be considered a close contact of somebody who may have been infected. This is from ODH. This is the decision framework that we will use to determine whether or not your student is a contact and make that decision based on that framework, whether or not we need to notify you that your child has been in contact with somebody who may have tested positive for COVID. Again, this will be posted on the website. They also have a fact sheet and guidance, which was way too much for you to put up there to read, so I printed it out just in case. But this also will be posted so that this gives you the information behind what that flow chart will be. And as I said, all of this information will be posted on our website and sent out in a district email tomorrow so that you can have all this information for you to review with your families.
I have a question. So if children are quarantined and they haven't worn a mask, then what are we doing educationally for those children for 7 days of quarantine?
So, yeah, so we're we're looking at, just like we would do if a child was out sick for a week, we will have to provide that work for that child. Because we're gonna know ahead of time that those children are at least were close contact. And so, we have been talking to our administrators that we're gonna have to provide at least 7 days of work for those kids to take home with them while they're quarantined. We cannot provide remote, instruction. As you know, we were able to do that last year because the law was actually suspended that allowed for us to have remote learning last year. They did not extend that suspension, so we are not permitted to provide that remote instruction. So that's not a viable option for those kids. Should they choose to, or should they get quarantined, we will provide that work for them.
No synchronous learning. If that's correct.
That's considered remote learning, yes.
About for families that have an immunocompromised individual, whether it's a child or an adult.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Fred, I didn't understand you.
Since we have no remote learning, what can we do for families that have an immunocompromised individual, either a child or an adult?
So if you have a child that has a medically diagnosed condition where they aren't allowed to attend school, we do have policy and procedures to provide instruction for those students.
And say if a parent is immunocompromised.
I'm sorry,
If a parent is immunocompromised,
not of a parent, we need to be the student.
I had some questions on the quarantine process. I had this PowerPoint, I hadn't seen it until just now, so I don't have time to go through the whole decision tree. But I was looking at the Cuyahoga County Board of Health guidance for schools. Is this supposed to be in line with that, or is this from the Ohio Department of Health? And are they aligned, or are they not aligned, or are we not sure?
No, they are aligned. I actually had both copies up there and I didn't want to confuse, and we did a cross check with our legal counsel to make sure. So this was an easier document for parents to follow. And the guidance, the fact sheet is an easier read. So this is the one that we decided to show, but we did a cross check with them.
So I'm just going to read from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health guidance on quarantining, this one particular section, because they did revise it. And just as I'm sure most people remember this, last year, it was obviously a very difficult year, but the original quarantine guidelines were very onerous. And we were, as COVID started to find our schools and started to get spread, we were seeing increasing numbers of students being quarantined because of how onerous it was. And then it wasn't until about the middle of the year where they relaxed some of that, saying all of these layered approaches are actually very effective. There's very little spread going on in schools. So because of that, as long as you keep all the layered protections in place, which included masks, then they reduced the quarantining. And that was one of the big reasons why we were able to be a lot more successful in the second half, because we didn't have to quarantine anybody who was a close contact, because our policy was masks for everybody. So this is the excerpt from their current guidance. Since the implementation of the layered prevention strategies mentioned earlier has proven to be effective in the K-12 school environments, as documented during studies and pilot evaluations, Ohio modified its standard quarantine procedures. These changes are intended to allow unvaccinated students who have been exposed to COVID-19 in a school setting to continue to attend school and participate in sports and extracurricular activities if, so there's 3 bullet points. So we have to meet all 3 of these according to the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. The infected person and the contact were both wearing masks consistently and correctly. All the aforementioned prevention strategies were in place, and they remain symptom-free. So I want to drill down on the first bullet point, because this says the infected person and the contact were both wearing masks. So can you help me understand, if we have a mask optional policy, strongly recommended, but it's still not mandated, so it's optional. And let's say we have a class of 24 students, 23 of them are wearing masks, and 1 student is not. And that person is the infected student. And that person has 8 contacts close to them. Even though all 8 were wearing masks, the infected person was not. So is it your understanding in that scenario, we would quarantine 9 students or 1 student?
It's not my understanding, because we have to look at all those factors based on the time. So more than just masking and not masking goes into it, your chances of not being quarantined are greater if you're wearing a mask, but it also goes to time and how much exposure that those people had with that person who was infected. So you can't make a blanket statement on would it look like that? It may not. It just depends on the other circumstances in which the kids and the close contacts were interacting with that student.
Well, I mean, they define what a close contact is, right? So it's within 60, it's within 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period. So they have the guidelines about how do you, I mean, we did it all last year, right? What's considered a close contact? At some point, we had cases pop up last year, and we had to make a determination who was a close contact and who wasn't. And so I guess we know how to identify close contacts. I guess my question is, with this quarantine policy, the way that I read it, this guidance says that both parties, both the infected person and the close contact have to be wearing masks. So I'm trying to understand, and tonight we're going to talk a lot about masks, and do we retain our current direction, which is that they're strongly recommended but not mandated, or is this something that we want to consider changing course? So this is a really critical point. Okay, in a scenario where one student who's infected is not wearing a mask, are all the close contacts, are they going to be quarantined also? Because that will be a huge factor in driving how many students end up getting quarantined or not.
Again, there's other factors involved, because the guidance was updated with masking now playing a part of that, also considering vaccination status. So it's going to depend on the scenario itself, and not necessarily do we make this blanket statement that this is how it's going to work. Because masks are playing a part in it, vaccination, the unvaccinated are playing a part in it, and what is recommended.
Well, you talked about vaccination, and that's the other piece which I was going to ask about too, because the guidance goes on to say, per current CDC guidance, fully vaccinated students do not have to quarantine. So your vaccination status does matter, but we can't ask students or adults or anyone, are you vaccinated, because of HIPAA laws. So we can't ask so that's why this is really important. I mean, today is August 10th. School starts in 8 days. This is the very first opportunity that the board has had to hear what our plans are or be engaged in the conversation. So now we're 8 days out, and this is really important stuff. So if we have strongly recommended masks, but they're still optional, it means we are going to have a mix in our buildings of students who are masked and students who are not masked. So day one, okay, a student comes down not feeling good and is identified they have COVID and they're not masked. What do?
We do our contact tracing just like we did last year. We apply the flow chart, we apply the guidance, we call the health department, everything we did last year, look at the new guidance, were they masked, were they not masked, if they choose not to tell us if they're vaccinated or not, you're right, their choice. We're gonna have to make decisions based on not knowing that information.
Okay. So first day, a student comes down with COVID, identified positive as COVID, they weren't wearing a mask, we do our contact tracing, 10 students were close contact. So now what do? Do we go to those 10 students and say, we're not allowed to ask you, so we're going to go on the honor system? Were any of you vaccinated? If you were vaccinated, you don't need to quarantine. So 5 families come back to us and say, my student was vaccinated. So now we're down to 5. Now what do we do with those 5? They quarantine, right?
They quarantine based on the information that we have.
Right.
Just like last year, we had kids that were walking around school that had COVID that we didn't know about. We had adults that had COVID that we didn't know about. We are only as good as the information that's provided to us and following the framework or guideline that keeps changing daily. What you're reading was updated again Friday afternoon. So this is something that we dealt with all last year, constant changing guidelines, just as you mentioned earlier, how the quarantining changed in the middle of the school year. I anticipate all of this is going to continue to change. It's not going to be any different than it was last year, where the guidance is going to be changing, requirements are going to be changing, who we have to contact is going to be changing, because the goal on all of these documents, the first statement, is to keep kids in school as much as possible, which is driving what these changes are and making them not as stringent on the quarantine piece of it.
I understand. The layers of protection haven't really changed. They're basically the same as last year. The big difference that we're discussing tonight, the change from last year to this year, is our current guidance right now for our families 8 days out from school are strongly recommend you wear a mask, but it's not mandatory. Which means the difference this year, if we stay the course from last year, is we will have students that are unmasked. Last year we did not, because it was mandatory.
Well, I want to be clear. We did have students that were unmasked last year because there are some medical conditions in which kids cannot be masked. And so I don't want it out that, we have situations and we have dealt with those situations and we'll continue to have those situations this year.
That's a fair point. So let me rephrase. We would anticipate many more students being unmasked this year than last year with a voluntary masking policy. Is that a fair statement?
Well, we're strongly recommending that, Mr. Gosen. So, I mean, if that's your understanding or if that's your take, then that's a possibility. Yeah, sure.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're going to have many students. We've already heard from a lot of parents who are not a fan of masks. So I assume we're going to have many students that aren't masked. That's all fine. All I'm asking is very simply, what do we do when a student who is unmasked is COVID positive? We identify close contacts, and then what? From there, what do we do? Let's go to the elementary schools, because the elementary schools, we know none of those students are vaccinated. So now we're in an elementary school. We're in second grade. One student is positive. Contact tracing shows 10 other students. Don't those 10 students have to quarantine because the one student was infected? It was not masked.
It's going to depend again on how long they have been, if they were around them for 15 minutes, what the scenario is. We can't make a blanket statement about who's a close contact or not. We've had cases last year where kids were in a room, and mind you, we were all wearing masks. We had kids that were in a room. There may have been 30 kids in it. They said they went around to different science stations or what have you, and it ended up being that there was only 2 that met that definition. So we have to do our due diligence around contact tracing, understanding the scenarios in which those kids may have been exposed before we even identify who those close contacts are.
I understand. I'm giving a hypothetical that 10 students are identified as close contact. This isn't that difficult, but this is not a difficult scenario.
Mark,
Yeah.
last year, I went through this with my son. The school nurses called all the families when something like this came up, and the school nurses did the interviews of the kids. So I think the questions would be better directed to other people.
But isn't there a way to eventually get to who is a close contact and who is not?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
so
the school nurses will ask a series of questions.
I understand.
And make a determination based on the answers to those questions.
Roger, I understand all of that. We're going to go through the process just like we did last year. I'm merely stating the school nurse makes all the calls. All the data is in. We have 10 close contacts. I mean, we had this last year. We had, in the earlier part of the year, we had large groups of people that were quarantined, students who couldn't participate in sports and who had to stay home. So this isn't anything new. This is an exact repeat of last year. What I'm saying is, in my hypothetical scenario, 10 students are identified as close contact. The one student who was the infected student was unmasked. What do? How can we not know that answer 8 days out from school? We have a policy. This is the first day the board has seen this presentation. So I'm asking the question. We're 8 days out from school. One student is infected. They were unmasked. 10 students were identified after all of the due diligence, after all of the vetting, after all the nurses' calls. What do we do with those 10 students?
Well, if that's the case, and all was vetted, and we determined that those 10 were close contacts, Mark, they are going to be recommended for quarantine.
Okay.
In one of those 3 scenarios, that is no different than what we did last year.
It is different than last year, because last year we had a mandatory mask
But
policy.
they still had to quarantine with mandatory masks.
They did not.
Yes, they did.
after a student was infected. Okay, and we did the close contact tracing, if students were masked, it says right here that if infected person and contact were both wearing masks consistently and correctly, and all aforementioned prevention strategies were in place, they remain symptom-free, then they can return to school. Are we saying
That is
later in
the
second
update,
half
Mark.
of the
That is the update that was not applicable last year. That is new applicable things that just came out on Friday and Thursday. They revised it twice now for this year only. Last year, mandatory masks, you identified close contacts, they were all wearing masks, they still had to quarantine.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. So this year though, with this guidance, they will have to quarantine still if the infected person was unmasked.
Correct.
Is there a point at which the entire class would be quarantined? I mean, is there or shut down? So many students are on quarantine.
I mean, is that in theory a possibility if they were all deemed close contacts? And yes, I mean, sure, if all of these other conditions weren't met, if there weren't, somebody wearing a mask or if everyone was wearing a mask, it's all going to depend. All of these situations are very situational and those decisions are made there. I don't think there was a quarantine situation last year that was the same. Everyone was different based on the contact, based on the amount of time. The only difference was that everyone was wearing masks and they still had to quarantine.
I have one question regarding the safety protocols that are currently in place. We spent a large number of district dollars provided to us by the government to put safety measures in place. I know that the document does provide guidance and direction on hand washing and sanitation. What happened to the partitions and barriers that were purchased? Are those still available for use in the classrooms?
They are still available. In addition, at the middle school and high school, we have installed bipolar ionization of the air purifiers. So both buildings will have constant purified air that is running through them. If you do recall, we bought some portable ones last year that we had stationed at the middle school, at the high school, at the elementary school. Those are all being sent to the elementary school to be put in areas where there would be kids in larger groups there.
I have a question about education. Again, so the children that are quarantined told me that they're not want to teach synchronously. I know I talked to a principal of a private school and they're going to be teaching synchronously when those children are quarantined. Is that like a hard no? That we're not allowed at all, that's prohibited, we cannot give direct instruction? Or is that like a principal club type decision? Is that something that's we could debate?
I suppose it could be
No,
anything.
where is that? I know that private schools are doing synchronous learning when those children get quarantined. I just am saying that because handing a packet to a second grader really, and so much on them. So I want to know, is there a room to change that?
Well, per law and then per consultation with our attorney, that would be considered remote learning. And what the law says is that you can do that. So it falls under that calamity day provision. So we are, we had an option as a district, and this district, for whatever reason, before I was here, decided not to go with an online option for those 5 calamity days. They decided that they would do a blizzard day instead of that. So what the law says is you're only allowed to do 5 days of remote instruction. So if you have kids who might be on quarantine for 7 days, it's outside the scope of what we're allowed to provide, and it's individualized. So if we did it for kids and it ended up being every day, you're technically doing remote learning for the entire year, depending on when those kids are out.
What I use is my compass is what's best for education. So I'm going to come back with those children wasn't the way it was last year when we were interacting with them. But they could just watch. Is that direct instruction? If I'm not interacting with them.
We didn't get that detail on it, but I'll definitely ask that question as a possible option.
As a possibility. As them watching my instruction, if they had that at home, they could go into a little classroom.
Sure.
I know this is going to happen can come on Zoom, watch me. I have no obligation to interact, ask them questions. That's where the trouble came in. Teaching at the same time and then teaching this whole other group of kids, remotely. That's a possibility. That feels better to me educationally, and I really would, I'm sure most of the parents, they would want that, so.
I would definitely look into it.
Circle back to the vaccination topic. So if we have situations where, there's some COVID positive and there's contact tracing, and some of the people identified as close contact, be they staff or student, are in that age range where they could be vaccinated. Do we know how we're going to handle that? Let's say, again, it's a scenario where somebody might be identified as needing quarantine unless they're fully vaccinated, or it's a staff member. So are we using like an honor policy? Are we not going to ask the question like, how are we going to address somebody's vaccination status when it could mean the difference between quarantining or not quarantining?
So we can ask the question. Sorry.
So we can ask the question. Parents are under no obligation to tell us. So, I mean, it's just kind of like, we have to trust our parents, and just like we did last year with symptom checking, they were checking temperature. We're going to trust that our families are not going to send their kids to school. If parents want to share that information, if that makes a difference between their child being quarantined or not being quarantined, they're going to make that decision on what information they want to share with us.
Okay. And what about our staff? Same thing?
Same thing. We collected information when the schools were able to get the vaccination. We collected information because we had to sign up staff. At that time, back in March, we had over 76% of our staff sign up for vaccinations. We did not keep that information for the same reasons you stated before. So I would like to say that 76% of our staff signed up. We know of some staff that didn't sign up because they were vaccinated prior to or medical conditions that they may have personally had. We also know that we had staff since then go to the makeup days. Other people that have shared with us, they had gone to get vaccinated over the summer for a variety of different reasons. So we are well above, I would say, in approximation, over 80% of our staff being vaccinated at this current time. Local data that was shared to me by a parent tracking vaccinations by city, Brecksville and Roger Heights has an average of about 62% of their residents already vaccinated as well. So we're monitoring all of that information to see where we are in terms of vaccination status, but we can't directly ask.
Mask policy, do we have any guidance on with our staff? It's the same thing, strongly recommended.
My last conversation with our president of our teachers union was exactly that. There's people that are feeling both ways about it. So I know OEA is coming out and recommending that staff does wear masks at their schools as well.
I want to push this envelope a little bit more. So I asked you the question, could we broadcast? So if we end up going mask, strongly recommended, could the parents who don't feel comfortable coming to school have the option of watching that direct instruction? And if so, then does that check off the box that that child is being educated, or do we have to enroll in that online program and that can't count?
That would not count, and especially for kids who have specially designed instruction, it'd be very difficult because that does not meet the requirement of their special education minutes that are required on their IEPs.
But not special ed. That's special.
That's not really online schooling then. There's no interaction between if it's only watch only.
So if they're enrolled here, they watch only, they turn in their work, they don't interact with them, we can't have that option.
That is why the state set up, if you wanted to take this other option to create an online school with a different IRN number and actually create a school.
Right.
And all those other things.
And you had to have said that that was what you were choosing to do on this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You chose not to do that.
So we actually submitted the form to give us the option because no one knows enough about it. So I was on a survey site with a bunch of school districts and nobody's doing it. We don't know enough about what that looked like, and they gave us a very short window to figure it out. So we put in the option, that we have the option to explore it and think about if it's something that we can offer later on this year. We just have to talk through that process. We did leave the window open.
Another question, so OHSAA, their guidelines, so when we're talking about all this quarantine, are the same mandates in place for athletics? Or is that a whole different set of rules?
The quarantining, and it says, and we kind of had this conversation at length with a couple of people. The quarantining guidance specifically says this is impacted in a school setting. In a school setting, in a classroom setting. So may not apply to other extracurricular activities, especially if that extracurricular activity is outside.
So if you're trying to prevent, so if your child's a football player, since we're in football, and you're trying to prevent your child not playing, okay, that even though, like, there's gonna be a different set of quarantine rules on the football field than there is in a school setting.
Depends. So if that child was exposed, considered a close contact in that school setting.
Right.
And was not wearing a mask or what have you, then they would be subject to quarantine because they were exposed in that school setting.
But
Exposure outside of the school setting has a whole different set of looking at close contact and what the situation was, was it outside, was it inside, extracurricular activities happen everywhere. So all of those, again, case by case basis, based on what is being presented, we'll make that determination. And the first is it a school setting?
Another question on testing. Last year there was a lot of focus put on testing. And there wasn't testing available, and then they ramped up testing. And I know at some point we got funding, and I think we have gotten some tests, which came with some strength attached. Has there been any look back at testing with leveraging that as another tool to help figure out whether or not there's spread starting?
We still have tests available to families if they would like to have a test to test on their own. We are not doing any of the testing. Some of the strength I think you're referring to was that we have tests available to families. We have to track those. We also have to report if we've given out any tests, but we are not administering those tests at all. And they are on an optional basis available to our families.
So are we offering that? I'm sorry, are we going to offer that like that, that we can distribute them, or how many times, do we have enough that we want to put that out there, or is it?
What I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but what I don't know is if those tests have an expiration date. So we got them in at the end of last year. We put an email out offering them out to families. So I need to circle back with our health department and say, is there an expiration date on those? And if not, and they're still available, yes, we will put that information out to families. If we have those available for their use, we are not administering those tests. I want to be very clear on that, because I think there were some families last year that were thinking we were going to administer the tests. No, they are not for us to administer. They're just simply a service that we would provide to our families should they require a test.
Discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make one more thought on that. And that is that, the multiple levels of health agencies at the federal, state, and county level, while they're all in agreement that masks are strongly recommended, they all push the responsibility down. You get CDC, fine and mandating masks on buses. So I received no emails about anybody questioning masks on buses because it's CDC mandate, but they didn't mandate anything about schools. Went down to the state, Ohio Department of Health didn't mandate masks. Went down to the county board of Health also strongly recommends masks, but they didn't mandate it. So in essence, they've been pushing the final decision on the local school boards all across the state. So now we're the ones that have to make the decision, and half of the people in our district are going to be happy and half of them are not going to be happy. But it is what it is. But if this whole thing, the people that point out it's consistency across all these agencies, and that's true, it's great. I wish one of them would have put the stake in the ground and said, yeah, it's that consistent and it's a no-brainer. And make the mandate instead of pushing it down to 600+ districts across the state.
And I think to that point, I mean, the difference is what's going on in Cleveland and what's going on in Westwood Heights. Numbers are completely different, so respectfully, I'm actually happy they didn't mandate it because I don't want to be lumped in with what's going on in Cleveland. And I'm sure a lot of other districts are thinking the same way. I get what you're saying, that they did push it down. But I'm almost thankful they did because I don't want to be lumped in with what's going on in Cleveland.
Okay, item D, public participation. The resolution that we passed under item A, resolve in support of and not to jeopardize the safety and welfare of the district. To temporarily amend Board of Education Policy 0169.1 for this August 10th, 2021 meeting. This is a special meeting, and normally in special meetings there isn't public participation. So we passed a resolution to allow public participation. And we have further resolved pursuant to Board Policy 0169.1. The board hereby consents to extend public participation beyond the 30-minute limitation and maintains its right to govern public participation in accordance with the governing rules of Board Policy 0169.1. That means that everyone that would like to have a chance to speak is welcome to speak for 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name
Is the green button on? You have to put down to the middle one. On this.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Lonnie Monteleone. You need me to give my home address? Is that required as part of this tonight?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of Russell Roger Heights Education Association. And as Mrs. Hager stated, we have had conversations about mask wearing. In line with the American Federation of Teachers, NEA, the National Education Association, and OES, the Ohio Education Association, we do believe that at this time, with the Delta variant, with the lack of vaccinations available for our elementary students, and the high communicability of it at this time, that at least a 10-day mask wearing policy at the beginning of the year could allow us to start the year and be able to see what data we have. Are we seeing it in our own community now that we are coming together? Are parents volunteering that their child has COVID? Are we seeing it impact our sports, our clubs, our opportunities? So, as I shared with Ms. Magna, I have members who represent the very community who have some want to wear masks, some don't want to wear masks. It's across the board. But at the end of the day, we are education focused. I wear my mask tonight in part because I have a son who plans to move into Ohio State next week. If I get breakthrough COVID and he tests positive, he doesn't move in. If I am teaching an elementary classroom and I have breakthrough COVID, then I am out of the classroom and I have potentially impacted that classroom. The science right now supports that with the mitigation strategies, mask wearing is the layer. We are going to have full classroom. BEA is not suggesting hybrid. We are not suggesting remote. We will have rooms where students will not have 3 feet between them. We are going to struggle with some of the strategies that were so successful last year. Mask wearing is something that we can do, and we can see how it helps us. And again, I'm looking every day at what is happening to members. And so I know it's not a popular decision, but we as adults have to put the health and welfare of those in our classroom first. Okay, kids have to wear shoes to my class, they have to dress up my class.
This is one more thing, it is a layer. I taught high school, my students did, over the nose and under the chin, and having to wear a mask. Respectfully, they did it. The second thing I have to say tonight, I'll probably be the only one to speak. Retired or higher, thank you to the board. You are saving this district money because two people who would have retired at the end of this year, getting full salary, they gave you notice and they're going to be lower on salary, and you know they're going to plant the right side for the next bill. A third person who did this found a way for us to retain the talents of a world language teacher because she went, this young teacher, from a part-time contract to a full-time contract. And a seasoned, veteran, lifelong learner, stellar teacher said, I'll work part-time and retire or hire. We are finding a way to look forward and also take care of our kids' education needs. So thank you on the retire or hire. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie. I'm an interventional cardiologist at University Hospital. I'm
Your address,
I'm sorry,
your address.
and my address is 10214 Woodlands Drive, Brexville. So I actually work on heart arteries and lung arteries. And I want to share with you some personal experiences I've had with specifically COVID patients. I want to highlight that in January, right after the December onset of massive overload of cases, in the first 48 hours of January 1st and 2nd, I personally sucked out 6 patients' blood clots from their lungs and saved their lives. I want to show you that there can be good outcomes even if patients are infected with COVID. However, for every patient that has a good outcome, there's also a patient that has had a poor outcome. There's a patient who was 60 years old. He contracted COVID from his wife who worked in a jail. He ended up coming to the hospital with the acute event where his leg didn't feel, couldn't move. He had a huge blood clot in his aorta that blocked up his leg. He actually subsequently died within 24 hours from complete organ failure of his entire life. So for every patient that recovers from COVID, we know that it is taking family members. And yes, the kids are not getting as much sick. However, these kids are seeing their parents, they're seeing their grandparents, they're hugging their 7-year-old father, your 8-year-old grandma, right? So you have to think about the people that you're affecting. This is why it's important. This is why we have to mandate masks. Because all of the kids and actors that's sick, they're going home and spreading it around the community where 40 to 45% of people are not vaccinated yet. Furthermore, the Delta variant, which was not mentioned yet, is actually tremendously on the rise. We're seeing our third peak right now. Our hospitals are starting to get overwhelmed again. You may have seen that when you come to the hospital, your procedures are delayed, your visits are delayed, our ERs are packed full. There's no real people to go. It's here. The Delta variant is here. We don't yet have a booster. It's important if we start school in 8 days that we must mandate that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Lee. I also live at 10214 Woodland Drive. I'm a neurologist at the Cleveland Clinic. And I just want to say a couple words. So again, I just want to emphasize that this is something new, the Delta variant. It's about 200% more infectious than the Alpha variant, meaning that it's as infectious as chickenpox. Secondly, kids don't have immunity. So only about 30% of kids have antibodies right now. And a lot, elementary school, particularly elementary school, there's no vaccine. Can safely do masks in public school? We showed this last year. When you mandate masks, people do follow. We should do it for our kids' health. Okay, so while most kids do well, some kids do not. There are multiple cases of MIS, which is multi-inflammatory syndrome, where multi-organ failure, kids can have that, and also long COVID. So in the UK, they just opened up multiple long COVID units for pediatrics because this does happen. We need to do it for our community, like my wife said. There are 40% of people who are not vaccinated. So even if they're not vaccinated, doing this will protect our community. And having a collaborative approach is far more effective than, one person being masked, one person not being masked. Because masks, while they do offer the person wearing them some protection, it's mostly protecting themselves. You're protecting other people. So for all those reasons, I definitely support mandatory.
I just want to thank Mrs. Maygar for all the hard work that she's done, because I know this is sort of a detail. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kathy Holt, and I'm a parent of a senior student. And we have lived in this district for 17 years, ever since she was born. I'm a medical professional with 20 years experience. I've worked directly with both patients for the last 18 months. My undergraduate degree was in biology, and I was a microbiology lab assistant. So let's just say I know a thing or two about bacteria and germs. I tell you this because I'm here to state some concerns about children wearing masks all day at school. And not that masks are necessary in school, nor I think they are healthy for children to be wearing. Masks are merely a piece of cloth or essentially a piece of paper. Let's just think of these masks as security blankets. Because of fear, people think somehow these masks are going to protect your children. I do think it's a false sense of security, and after all, our mouths are the dirtiest part of our body. There are so many types of bacteria in our mouth that occur naturally. In June of 2021, a group of parents in Gainesville, Florida, who were concerned about potential harm from masks, decided to do their own study or evaluation. And they took it upon themselves because they didn't feel their concerns were being fully addressed. They submitted 6 masks to an independent lab for analysis, and these lab masks were either paper masks that were new or freshly laundered masks that their children wore for a regular school day. So the lab took cultures of these masks, and the report found that 5 of these masks were contaminated with bacteria, fungi, and parasites. And some of the bacteria that grew out included Streptococcus pneumoniae, which is the bacteria that causes bacterial pneumonia, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is the bacteria that causes tuberculosis. And just to name another bacteria, including the 11 dangerous pathogens, was Neisseria meningitidis, which is the bacteria that causes bacterial meningitis. The child wearing a mask all day is a great medium for bacteria to develop because bacteria like to remember the warm, nice environments. And if these are our masks, your children are inhaling this. How many times a day do we adjust our mask? Every time you adjust it, do you wash your hands or sanitize? Your dirty hands are touching that mask, and then they go eat lunch, right? What are they doing with their mask? Put it on the desk, put it on the table. That dirty bacteria-infested mask is now contaminated. So, just some things to think about. I, for one, would rather breathe fresh air. The school board is elected by us, the constituents, the taxpayers. We pay for this building, and we pay for you to be here on behalf of all of us. And I say this because as you make your decision about this mask policy, please keep in mind all of our wishes as a whole. If parents want their child to wear a mask, it's their right to have them wear a mask. The last time I checked, it's still with 300. Okay, so if I as a parent don't want my child.
Okay, let's do this. Please.
If I as a parent do not want my child wearing a piece of cloth or paper that's bacteria infested all day, then that is my choice as a parent as well. In closing, I ask you to allow these types of decisions up to individual parents who do not make health decisions for my child. That is my job. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Griffin. I'm a BBH graduate, 95, and mother of a rising fifth grader. I'm here to advocate for mask mandates for everyone, but particularly for grades K through 8, since all elementary schools and middle schools will be closed with kids who do not have the option of getting a vaccine. The ultimate goal should be to avoid quarantine or school shutdown, which can be very disruptive to working parents, as well as to keep our kids healthy. Even asymptomatic cases of COVID can lead to long COVID symptoms that may not be easily detected in young kids, such as lung damage, brain fog, erectile and more. Experts also say that the more COVID circulates in general, it becomes a question of not if, but when a new mutation happens in our vaccine next. So let's review how things changed rapidly over the last 60 days. On May 13th, long ago, the CDC said that fully vaccinated people would be indoors access. On July 1st, the practice was declared masks to be optional going forward. By mid-July, the Delta variant became the dominant strain in the US and case rates started climbing again. On July 20th, the American Academy of Pediatricians recommended that everyone inside school wear masks or masks vaccinated every month. On July 27th, the CDC recommended everyone wear masks indoors despite vaccination status, noting that the war has changed due to the crazy differences between Delta and Alpha. By early August, Summit County, Cuyahoga County had started requiring masks indoors in county buildings, as well as big local companies of John Deere. On August 5th, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommended that all students, teachers, visitors, and staff members should wear masks in school regardless of vaccination status. On August 7th, the U.S. set a single-day record for the number of children admitted to hospitals with COVID-19. The Children's Hospital was as tracked by the CDC are at the highest point of the entire pandemic. It's important to note what's not yet on this timeline, HE244, which is October 13th. There should not be a constraining factor on any school decisions until October 13th, as the situation is changing rapidly. Vaccination rate completion may be higher by that point. Delta could be on the downstream. The COVID vaccine may have FDA approval, or COVID vaccines may be available for those under 12. Also not on this timeline, at least in the middle school, the new AC system that will ionize the air, which won't be completely installed until mid-September. We need to prevent all of this, and that's enough masking up is the least we can do. It's cheap, it's easy to confirm if someone is doing it properly. And important here, kids and teachers did it all last year, so we're used to it. It's a very easy to do for the first month of school. And to point out, being a free country, we still have to wear seatbelts. And I can drink, but I still get in trouble if I drive down. So,
Rob, Michelle, students here in high school. I thank you all for involving us, parents, on the 7972 numbers. Thank you for all the parents and our considerations for practices pertaining to COVID-19. I've asked the Lord to intervene and guide this district embodying the direction of truth, clarity, and wisdom, making decisions using common sense along with logical understanding and not by irrational decisions. I'm speaking on behalf of my children, and I'm quite sure for many other parents in the school district that have a huge concern with somebody deciding to help the safety of our children. In the beginning, of course, we all have to trust what the chief medical advisor said, the NIH and the CDC guidelines. Started off in 2 weeks, flat curve. Masks were discouraged to wear, and it said masks could cause further complications, and it wouldn't help prevent the virus from spreading. And it only give you a false sense of security. Masks were highly not recommended in the beginning. Then it changed. Yes, we need to wear a mask based on the science, which has never to this day been proven with data. Then we were told by the NIH, symptomatic people who may not have known yet that they're infected have to wear a mask as well. So the mask mandates were implemented along with authoritarian style lockdowns. Government deciding who's essential and who's not. All this done without any scientific data to prove this and support it. When growing up, the doctors would always say it's a virus, it has to run its course naturally. That's the science of change. Many frontline doctors and nurses have come forward with studies, and they're being censored. We're not even being allowed to hear them. And they shared that there was medicine to treat this, like hydroxychloroquine, that was up tremendously. Then we were told that was misinformation, and it was all removed from social media platforms. Those doctor statements, those doctors' treatments were discredited, they were ridiculed. Their licenses were in jeopardy for speaking the truth about the effectiveness in treating COVID-19. The NIH halted the study in this hydroxychloroquine. They said it had no benefits, along with the World Health Organization. Lo and behold, a year later, hydroxychloroquine, along with zinc, does have significant evidence treating COVID-19. Think about how many lives have been saved if that information was shared and used instead of censored as they're doing. Mask mandates were lifted by the summer if you were vaccinated. Then the Delta variant, which is a mutation of the original COVID-19, which is more transmissible but less harmful than COVID. You're not hearing all that information because that's all being pumped up with all this stuff. Vaccinations were approved for emergency use only, not FDA approved.
You need to cut it short.
I'm sorry, they all had over 5 minutes, sir. Please give me my time. I have. Please be fair. You guys are correct. Now,
This is the first time we've ever timed anyone.
nobody else is dying. Now vaccinated folks can still get COVID. Mask mandates are back, whether you're vaccinated or not. Chief medical advice is now saying until everyone is vaccinated, we must continue to wear masks. Masks and vaccines can stop COVID spikes within 2 weeks, said the CDC director. Always zero evidence and absolutely no data to confirm this. They should do the studies on masks and what harm that they do. Young lady that was just up here just gave you some. And here's another one. VAERS reporting. 2005 to 2020, VAERS reported 3,445 deaths from vaccines taken in those 15 years. Just in 4 months, VAERS reported COVID vaccine deaths, 3,486. When 25 deaths were reported from the H1N1 vaccine, that resulted, they stopped giving the vaccines after 25 people. We're just at 3,486. This was a while ago. People who share this information are all censored on social media. Can't make this stuff up. It's really scary. It's really concerning, very scary for a lot of us. Getting back to the reason why we're here, concerns the safety of our children. The children, here's a fact, the children are the least vulnerable to get infected, spread the virus, and die. But yet masks and vaccines are being pushed out of fear, not science, using intimidation tactics, fear mongering, censorship of opposition scientific truth. The NIH and CDC are political bureaucrats. They have flip-flopped their policy since the very beginning. It's the last page. They claim they follow science, but when asked to provide science data, they cannot. They tell us it's common sense to wear a mask, but never scientifically proven, never once. For as much as this virus is being heightened, if this truly is a deadly virus and there is a pandemic, then why is the government allowing our border to be wide open? That's the CDC, and it's actually contradicted through science. The CDC and the NIH cannot be trusted anymore. People are waking up to this medical tyranny. I may not be a scientist or a medical doctor, but God gave me a brain using common sense, simple logic, and readily available research along with asking people. I come to one conclusion: something's completely wrong with all this. Too many red flags. Too many red flags. Too many mixed messages from them. From the so-called experts. The lockdowns have not been proven to work. Masks have not been proven to work. Vaccines have not been fully tested. The lockdowns have been proven to cause more harm than good. Suicide is up. Drug and alcohol use is increased. Child abuse is up. Domestic violence is up. Anxiety and depression is on the rise. And they are constantly pumping fear to everybody's TV station. 24 hours a year telling us it's our patriotic duty to get vaccinated, running our freedoms and liberties for the virus in which 99% of us, if infected, will survive. It's continuing. How long will we go on with this continue? The CDC and the NIH are actually doing things that are contrary to all the rules of science. Enough is enough. I stand firmly against forcing our children to wear a face covering that has no scientific evidence to justify these mandates. I will make my own health decisions based on what's best for my children's health and safety, as well as every other parent should be able to do. I refuse to back down from this tyranny and this science, falsely so-called lies. If you decide to implement this policy again, I demand from all of you to show me the data that supports that instead of believing all these lies that are telling us for some other game that is not for the benefit of our children. They don't care about our kids. Let us as parents decide if we want a mask or no mask, vaccine or no mask, vaccine. Mandates without scientific evidence, force mandates without scientific evidence proving that they do not work. That's not following true science. It's about being in compliance with this authoritarian government, which everybody knows is going on. I pray that you will all see God through wisdom, through truth, and help direct your decisions with these guidelines. God bless you all, and I thank you all. God bless the school district. May God bless the United States of America. God bless that. Hey.
Hi, I'm Gina Andrews at 362 Wheeling Park Drive. I'm just here to ask people to broaden their perspective on the issue of universal masking for children. I've been a mental health professional working with kids for 20 plus years, and I've seen firsthand the increase in depression and anxiety since the pandemic. When it comes to being in a mask all day, and I talk to kids about how that makes them feel, they say things to me like I can't breathe in them. They give me headaches, they make me feel sad, they make me feel tired, I can't concentrate, I feel hopeless, I don't recognize my friends. I don't know if someone's happy or sad, I'm confused, I'm scared at school because I know if I need to take my mask off for a minute to breathe, my teacher will get mad at me, and I don't want to let my teachers down. Many studies are taking place right now that are looking at the implications of masking on mental health, and this is a great concern since suicide does remain the second cause of death among children in the United States. All summer, our children have been thriving without forced masking. They've been attending camps, playing sports, attending summer school programs, visiting with friends daily, going to schools and parks, and traveling with their families. We know from the retrospective data analyses that are coming out that people who masked consistently did not contract COVID less than people who did not mask. There's no study that's been done to show that masking children for 8 hours a day is safe. Even surgeons, nurses, and doctors don't wear masks for 8 hours straight without taking a break. They take them off as needed, and they switch them out as needed. Only children were expected to wear them all day and be dictated when they could and could not take them off. There are other mitigation interventions that are effective and also do no harm. And these include increasing ventilation and air purification systems in our classrooms, which our district is doing and doing a very good job at. There is no legal mandate right now to require the children to wear masks while in school. Please continue to let parents decide if masking is or is not appropriate for their child, as our children all have unique needs. If our school district were to mandate masks, I, along with many other parents, we do not give our consent for our children to wear these medical devices strapped across their faces, blocking their breathing all day at school. Thank you.
Can you speak closer to the mic, please?
No, it's okay, and it bends a little bit, so just do that. Yeah. Fascinating for children in the elementary school. They're not eligible to get the vaccine. Their only level of protection because again, if it's not required in their statute, so they themselves has been vaccinated, we don't know, so we don't know the exposure rates. So I think it's in the child interest and safety. Those looking to speak on this and also looking actual facts and health issue instead of something else that they label or they don't cause facts. But that's what I can say. Just their kids don't have the option to protect it. Well, we have. So we should allow that at least.
before I introduce myself even, I just want to apologize for my alarm going off earlier. It's my daughter's inhaler alarm. She is asthma, which is part of why I apologize. Members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Dr. Ariane Shrobek, and I live on Creekside Trace in Broadview Heights. I ask you to implement mandatory masking for all students, staff, and visitors. When I consider the issue of masking in schools, I think about it from 3 different perspectives: as a mother, a school psychologist, and a taxpayer. First, as a mother, I'm concerned about the short and long-term health consequences if my child were to contract COVID, the possibility of our healthcare systems being overwhelmed by outbreaks in our school communities, and the disruptions to in-person learning that could be mitigated by universal masking. These concerns are exacerbated by the now endemic Delta variant, which is as contagious as chickenpox, meaning that each student who contracts it will likely spread the virus to between 5 and 8 people if precautions like masks are not enforced. Second, as a school psychologist, my expertise causes me to consider 2 things. One is that children have a right to public education. Unfortunately, the pandemic has necessarily disrupted their ability to exercise their due rights due to closings and quarantines. Masks provide the only effective, minimally intrusive, and scientifically backed way of ensuring that those children who are too young to be vaccinated can exercise their right to an education with as few disruptions as possible. The second thing I consider is this. When mental health professionals think about what factors contribute to negative mental health outcomes, they think about ACEs, or adverse childhood events. The way it works is that the more ACEs the person has, the more likely that person is to go on to experience a number of negative outcomes later in life. Things like suicide, substance abuse, mental illness, and dropping out of school. These are known correlations that have been backed by years of research prior to COVID. The pandemic has led to an increased risk of experiencing ACEs, and universal masking plays a critical role in lowering the risk that children will suffer from it. Third, as a taxpayer, I consider the potential financial implications of mandating masks or not. The most obvious issue that surfaces is losses, both those that occur due to real or perceived injury to a child, and those that occur due to problems accessing education. Now, certainly, I suspect that losses are concerns for you regardless of what decision you make, and you likely know far more about the risks related to them than I do. However, as someone whose taxes will be paying for any potential losses that arise as a result of your decision, I want to ensure that the district is in the best position to defend itself. It's common sense that decisions that are based on the recommendations of the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, State of Ohio, and Cuyahoga County Board of Health will be easier to defend and thus less costly to taxpayers than would decisions that buck those recommendations. Consequently, from a purely financial position, I encourage you to follow the guidance of these institutions and mandate masks, at least until all students have access to vaccines to protect them. After that point, each family can truly choose whether to protect their children or not. But until that time, the decision of one family can endanger the child of another. Thank you very much for your attention. Hi, my name is Stacia Vincent. I also live on Creekside Trace, 8120. I did a lot of research. I hate being on the computer, and I spent a lot of time on Friday. You had the folders in front of me, and I did spend a lot of time and heartfelt time doing this, and a lot of prayer, actually. So one thing that was not brought up, and I'm not sure why, with all the medical professionals, is natural immunity, because I have that. I know for a fact that my antibodies for a year because I gave blood and they did tests. So I'm sorry.
Listen, please, let's be respectful. I mean, we teach our children that. Can we not do that ourselves?
There's also proof that there is more, even longer term protection. Also in plenty of articles that by people who are not being paid by large medical groups of either side or big tech. But I'm standing there listening, and what I'm seeing is mask mandate. We want the choice, and that's all we're asking for is a choice. Let us make the choice as parents. Let us do the research for our family, and let us make the choice for our child. Since vaccines have been available to 12 and above, and all of our teachers and staff, those who wanted it have had the chance to get it. and ample time, because we still have 8 days before school starts, to be protected. If they work, like some people seem to think, then there shouldn't be a risk to those people if we choose to not mask. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm saying we should have the choice. We're not saying don't let them wear a mask. We're saying let us have the choice. So I hope that you will consider that when you're discussing and researching and deciding what you're going to do for the entire district. It is large, it's very divisive, and I've learned a lot about people that I've known for 15 years, not just with COVID, but some other stuff. And it makes me sad. It makes me sad. So please know that I do pray from the president all the way down to you guys. So I do appreciate the work that you're doing. It's not fun, I'm sure, if you can sit out there and listen to what's going on. So thank you. Please consider everybody's opinion, and just do what you think is best.
Thank you.
Mine's definitely not gonna be that. I live 9905 Tamarack Trail, in Copper. I currently have a child that's in the school district, but I also have a child that's in another school district. And the thing that I want to present to you as a board, one of the things you kept citing was the fact that we only have 8 days left. We only have 8 days left, and this is a monumental decision. It shouldn't have come to this. It shouldn't come to 8 days before the school started. My child is in another school district. They put out a very simple survey to all the constituents. They let the constituents make the decision. 60% came up with they wanted to make a choice. So that's what the board went with. I still think we live in a democracy, and I really don't think 5 people should have that influence over. And that's what you said. I'm gonna have 50% of people mad at me, 50% of people won't be. You truly believe that? Put it out. See what the people think. Put it online. They did it for a week. They did it 6-7 weeks ago. It's already in place. So shame on you guys for letting it go this long. But it's real easy. Put it out to your constituents, see what they say. And it absolves you from making any kind of decision to piss people off. Because now you've put it to your constituents and you said, what do you guys want? That's all I got. Thank you.
Really short. I apologize for my interruption. I have not reached the meeting before. I was like kind of seeing this as part of the course. I don't want to hear that he can't ask, and I don't want to hear that he can't beg.
Pardon me, what was your name and address?
I am so sorry, Paula Huffman. My stepdaughter is going into 8th grade. Superintendent, we have brought over the committee that asks for students on buses. The CEC recommends it yours, the Ohio Governor recommends it yours, and the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends it. So we all came here tonight to facts and figures and on preconceived notions, but I'd like to bring all that back around to see how it holds the Drexel Project Heights own culture plate. So if we go back to what I have here. First is be your best. No one can be their best when they're sick. No one can be their best when they're afraid. No one can be their best when they're worried. All of those things stem from not wearing a mask, not knowing who's sitting beside you, not knowing they're going to make you sick. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to be a leader. Challenge yourself to join the list of 17 local school districts and 20 other states already implementing mask mandates. Actively engage. Students can't actively engage when they're fearful. Own your choices. I don't think anyone is equipped with the emotional ability of knowing they need someone else sick. My child goes to school, contracts COVID, and brings it home to me, I'm in the hospital. Period. And I know that I am not the only student or family member in this home. Masks are currently a choice. Let's teach our children to choose health, to choose safety, choose better safe than sorry. Respect authority, stick to what is recommended. As children, oftentimes, they cannot fully grasp this concept. So it is up to us to explain and enforce. Second, be one community. Let's teach our children to be leaders, so this community can continue to prosper. What we do not want or need is to be in a newsstand list of counties in the right, and yet we are. Build relationships, not possible when we don't know others' state of health. We cannot or will not question if they are vaccinated, and we have few precautions to stave off this epidemic. Empower others. I've seen other parents post concerns about bullying over masks. So let's simply prevent that from even becoming a concern. Third, be the future. At the risk of sounding a little dramatic, let us allow everyone to talk. We are now hearing the risks of long-term COVID, and currently the childhood population is at the highest risk. After the purpose, there is a purpose. Let's teach our children the risks, the prevention, and ways to stop this from illness or overtaking the school. Pursue your plan. At this point, I don't feel like we have that plan. I do realize a lot has changed as spoke about earlier, but before then, the current plan was posted online on June 2nd. Every other school district with a posted plan has used the phrase social distancing. However, I did not see it mentioned in any of the superintendent's notes. We need a plan and one that's flexible enough to change when necessary. Live forever proud. I cannot think of a moment more proud than when my child chooses the health and well-being of herself and the others around her. Be leaders, not those recklessly seeking a reason to fight the mass mandate. Right now, public health trumps social ethics. Some will not get vaccinated, and the only other way that we currently know how to keep ourselves and others safe is to mask up. It's a simple, non-invasive act. Let's show our kids how to live with the BBH code of conduct and the safety of simply wearing a mask. As the governor is pointing out last winter, quote, we had great success with all kids wearing masks and saw virtually no spread in the classroom. End quote. Let's keep that.
Hello, my name is Grace Alford. I live in Rocky Heights, and I'm a senior at Brexville Rocky Heights High School. I'm part of the Student Council Board, and I'm a president of the leadership. I'm one of many concerned and anxious students waiting to hear how my final year is going to go. Throughout my high school career, I've had only one so-called normal year. This is very upsetting to me and many of my peers. I'd like to share with you all some of my concerns and the negative effects mandating masks have caused in the past 4 years. I feel students' mental health should be our community's #1 focus. The amount of anxiety built up in us kids through these past 18 months is alarming. And like mentioned before, we do our best to be comfortable. School is a place where everyone should feel safe and welcome, but unfortunately, that's not the case for many anymore. I used to love school. I'd be excited to learn, see my friends, do cool science experiments, and talk to so many interesting people. This was all taken away from us in a blink of an eye. Like many of my classmates, I struggle with anxiety. And in this past 18 months, I can't express in words how much it's taken up my day-to-day life. Sadly, it all stems from the school environment. We're always told that our schools do not tolerate bullying. Yet I fail to see this enforced across the board to everyone. So many kids feel that they're not able to voice their opinions because they might be viewed different. I feel this is greatly due to the guilt that's been pushed on us for having different opinions this past year. While we're here tonight, you may realize that there aren't many students speaking. There are students, my classmates, we care. High school is our job and our life, but the guilt that's been pushed on us for 18 months has caused many students to go silent and feel hopeless. We're being taught to listen to adults when high school is all about finding who you are. It's hard to find yourself when your thoughts and opinions are constantly being pushed aside by people you once looked up to. To put this in a more personal perspective, I want to share with everyone some of my experiences this past school year. In the past 18 months, I felt singled out by staff that I should be able to trust for my different opinions. A few weeks into school last year, I met with the principal starting my concerns with the mandated mask policy. Although I was educated on the physical risk of wearing a mask, I chose to talk about my concerns from the mental and emotional aspect of things. After all, wearing a mask is a personal choice and not a decision I can make for another peer. To no surprise, nothing I said in this meeting was taken seriously or concerned any staff. I then talked to my guidance counselor about how I felt hopeless and unheard. Although this counselor agreed with me, their hands were tied. Last year, I took a math class from a teacher who was educated in teaching math. I took chemistry from a teacher who studied chemistry in college. And ironically enough, my business teacher studied business. So why did my teachers try to educate these vulnerable and impressionable young teens about math? I thought my teachers took every opportunity they could to talk about COVID-19 and try to educate us clearly based on their opinion. Multiple times I would have teachers make comments directly towards me referring to my beliefs. This would catch me off guard and make me extremely uncomfortable with my classmates. These scenarios would happen quite often, so I started to express how I felt to my parents. My parents talked with my principals, counselors, and teachers on many occasions concerning how I felt singled out. I didn't expect special treatment, but I did expect my teachers to protect me from adult bullies. One day I was walking to my 6th grade class and I was readjusting my mask. A teacher that I wasn't familiar with stopped in their tracks and screamed at me in front of everyone. I would love to share with you all more details, but unfortunately, this bully in particular is my teacher this year. I want to speak up, but I'm scared to risk any unfair treatment for the year to come. If I went to break out now, I felt targeted by so many of my teachers. It came to the point where I would get so anxious before their classes, I felt like I was going to pass out. Maybe it was the lack of oxygen I was getting due to my mask, but I don't know that. I made the decision to be an online learner for the 2nd semester. I, of course, explored all my options, but I was not allowed to come to school without a mask. At this time in my life, I felt so alone and isolated. I even lost some friends because I wasn't at school. For those of you who don't find the kids' mental well-being important, let's talk academics. The discussion of masks and COVID fulfilled lots of class time when we should have been learning. Teachers trying to help kids in class and at home didn't work as efficiently. I tried my hardest to get through the school year with my grades, not taking a bad beat. For those of you with kids in the school system, you may have noticed that your kids' grades were also good considering our circumstances. But has anyone looked at your child's long-term academic progression? I decided to look further into my academics and came across my ACT scores from freshman year to junior year. And let me say, I'm embarrassed of what I'm about to share with you all. I scored higher in freshman ACT scores than my junior ACT score. It's extremely motivating to see myself perform so poorly after all my hard work in these stressful 18 months. If this is just my experience, what about my other classmates? We've had nothing done in the past 2 school years because the adults are so worried about having students have masks on. At the beginning of August, I was getting super excited for the school to start. We were originally told by our superintendent that we might be able to go without masks or have an option. I was so happy. This meant that everyone would be able to come together while still feeling comfortable with their personal choice. The board is now telling us they want everyone to wear masks. This upsets me and many families in our community. Whether we choose to wear a mask or not, it's not a decision for a public school system, but for each individual family. My parents are here to do what's best for me, so let other parents do the same for their children. Thank you.
Can I say something? Grace Doppler, first of all, you are so, you are, you know, like, this is a lesson. I wish I could take all this away, but we can't. And this is a lesson, and you see how people have acted towards each other in this room. You're no different. I am so sad and disgusted after living through this for a year, and I'm sorry to be melodramatic. The way some of you act towards each other, look what you're doing to your children. I just want to say, we don't have to agree. This is the disrespect for us not agreeing. And I spend my time in the classroom teaching that, and I'm looking at some of you laughing, doctors laughing, shame on you. You can laugh, look, you're laughing now. How awful. And that child came up in front of you, and she told you that's what she's seeing. We are an educational institution. And the lessons, Grace, that you take away from this is that we have become a society of disrespect for differing opinions. Because in the end, we aren't always going to agree. But we can control how we treat each other, and our children are always watching us. So ask yourself, especially if you're at the high end of your profession, you're sitting laughing at differing opinions and you're making medical decisions.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Frank Copper. There is, my second number. I had some prepared this evening. What I wanted to say is already been said. I will tell you, I practiced this position 23 years. Treated thousands of patients. School thousands of hours. Anatomy, virology, physiology. My chemistry degree and a psychology degree from Case Western. 2.5 years with the USDA. Where my primary job was PPE. I don't want to sound braggadocious, that's not my intent, but I will say I'm probably one of the few people in our community who can speak on the subject with data, natural facts, true science. But it does amaze me how the last year and a half, in just a few short hours on CNN, with a few papers out, everybody has become such an expert in something. That's where they can make this decision. Mrs. Grant, I'm glad you said that. I agree with you 100%. Whereas I had something prepared on first night, insanity, under lies, typical straw man arguments, some threats to the Lord, others, opinions, and same stuff that's been regurgitated for this last year and a half on this subject. What I have not heard much of was actual data or facts or science, other than basic anecdotal. So rather than go straight to that, I'll just go right to the point of just some of the data. Now, sum this up, if people want this information, please see me after, give me your number, email, or something I can share. May 2020 meta study by United States CDC. Face masks have no effect either as personal protective equipment nor as a source of control. Danish randomized control study, 6,000 participants, published in Annals of Internal Medicine, November 2020, found no statistically significant effect of high quality medical face masks in the SARS-CoV-2 infection in the community setting. July 2020, Oxford Center for Evidence-Based Medicine. There's no evidence for the effectiveness of cloth masks with virus infection or transmission. May 2020, cross-country study by the University of East Anglia found that mask requirement was of no benefit. It could even increase the risk of infection. April 2020, reviewed by U.S. professors of respiratory infectious disease at the University of Illinois, concluded that face masks have no effect in everyday life, either as self-protection or to protect third parties. New England Journal of Medicine, May 2020, came to the conclusion that cloth face masks offer little to no protection in everyday life. April 2020, Cochrane Review found that face masks didn't reduce influenza-like illness cases either in the general population nor in healthcare workers. Now, before you say, well, that's the flu virus itself is at about 125 nanometers in size, which is about the exact same size and slightly larger than that of the SARS-CoV-2. April 2020, reviewed by the Norwich School of Medicine, evidence is not sufficiently strong enough to support widespread use of face masks. And I can go on and on with British Journal of Medicine, for different things from Germany, multiple studies from different countries, Italy, Spain, UK, California, states of Hawaii, Austria, and on and on and on, that show the exact same infection rates nationwide at the same times with the same curves, regardless of whether they were masked or not masked. I've heard the argument, and I'm glad this is part of it throughout the night, that this is about the safety of the children. And that is exactly what this should be. We should have our political side, our ideology pushed to the side, and actually look at the facts. And that has not been done. The masks, according to actual data, do not work. But do they cause problems? Do they cause suicide? Do they cause anxiety? Multiple studies, and yes, I've got 17 pages worth right here that show yes, they do. By unbiased, unpaid studies from across the world. Do what's right. If you decide you want your child to wear a mask, then that's your right and that child. If you do not want them to wear a mask because maybe you have a different insight or data, that should be your choice. Stop making those choices for us. We're proposing that you have the ability to. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Dan Bender. I'm joined by my wife Megan with 7505 Bristol Lane. In my prepared remarks, I don't have down here to tell you that I'm born on December 26th. My birthday is the day after Christmas. And I bring that up because following Jesus' birthdays is a really tough thing to do. No one really cares. And I think after the last two speakers, you may not care what I have to say about this. So, but grace, don't worry about those ACT scores. Get courage. You'll be fine in life. We have 4 children. We have 4 children under the age of 7. This is actually our first night out since our anniversary in April, so this is a really bad thing. Our oldest daughter attended Highland Drive last school year, which is where we're planning on sending her for first grade. She has 2 younger sisters who are also slated to start school in the fall, kindergarten and stepping stones. I myself attended Drexel Broadway High School, K-12, and between my siblings, my older cousins, all of our kids, there has been a vendor at the Drexel schools for 40 the last 45 years, if my math is correct. Take away the math this year, so I think I got it. To say that we have a tremendous amount of deep pride and admiration for the school district would be an understatement. That being said, I just want to thank you guys. I know it's been a terrible, tough year for you all the last year and a half, and I said to my wife earlier, I'm glad I am not on that stage. You guys have a tough job. So yeah, let's get around. Videos are different from other people in this room. I really do believe that everyone who's here in this auditorium is here because they have the best interest of our children at heart. You may recall Megan actually attending a school board meeting towards the end of last year to ask the district to end the requirement for students to wear masks at that time. We, of course, had serious concerns about COVID when everything first started, and by that point in time, the state had already ended any of their mask mandates. We felt that masking children in non-air conditioned buildings, temperature rose into the 80s, posed a greater health risk to our students than COVID-19 did. So with this recently brought up adverse childhood experiences. And I can tell you, again, anecdotally, we had COVID hit our house, our kids got sick, we got sick. And I think that the more adverse experience was wearing a mask to school for a year than being sick for COVID. Moreover, our daughter was concluding a challenging first year of kindergarten where she'd been receiving speech therapy throughout the year. She'd been on an IEP for this since the beginning of the year. We strongly believe that the progress that she had made and was making along with the other students in a similar position had been adversely impacted by her fellow students and teachers wearing masks throughout the year. We, like so many people have brought up, felt and still feel that the long-term psychological, emotional, social implications of masking children can be manifested for years to come. So I'm going to pivot a little bit from some of my remarks here, but just to shorten this up, but we were very happy to get the email back in July saying that the school board would make it parents' decision as to whether they would mask. It made a lot of sense for so many reasons. All the teachers have had a desire to get vaccinated, have ample opportunity to do so, as have the older high school children, and as a lot of people brought up, the data shows that the younger children are not getting anywhere near the level of deaths that elderly people and so on and so forth have. So we were happy to hear that. But yes, let me make this clear. Megan and I are not here to debate about all of the data about vaccines and the virus and masking. There's been plenty of that, and I don't think we don't need to go in there. We're just here to state that the best people do all that research and decide for them, their children, or their parents. Let me also make this clear. We're not here as Republicans or Democrats. We're here as concerned parents who want the best for all students in the district. However, we know across the nation, this conversation has sadly become very politicized. It's got very nasty, as Kathleen Magnus just brought up. It was recently brought to my attention by another parent in the school district that our school board president, Fred Peterson, had posted multiple posts on his Facebook page recently that were described to me as inflammatory. I was curious about this, and this past weekend I went on social media to see that since June 18th, Mr. Peterson had posted 10 things that I think were new. One of which was a birthday message to a family member, 2 were videos of the dogs. The other 7 were related to COVID-19, politics, or some combination thereof. In those 7 posts, Mr. Peterson questioned the intellect and patriotism of those who had dissenting opinions to him on masking and vaccinations. Now, let me make this clear too. I fully support his right to express his thoughts. As I was once told, having the right to do something and being right and doing it are 2 different things. It concerns us greatly that decisions on this matter are being made by someone who seems unwilling to even listen to those who have a different point of view. We can do better. We should do better. Say that our district is at a crossroads. It gets to this fundamental question. Where do decisions related to a student's health stop being made by their parents and start being made by school officials? Megan and I believe that the family is the foundation of society, and that the school board and government ought to honor that, not undermine that. Now, Mark, you said earlier that you would wish maybe the county or the state had put a stake in the ground so that it wouldn't be all of the school board. We're glad that the county and the state and the federal government did it, and we hope that the school board doesn't either, because we want that decision to be ours. Decision with some families that have their children wear masks for various reasons that we don't know. And we hope that the same respect will be reciprocal for families that don't want their kids wearing masks. We anticipate at a high level that if the district reverses any sort of decision on masks or eventually requires the vaccine or does anything else to undermine the decision making of the parents, that there will be repercussions for not only the children, as we talked about, but the school district itself. Change course just days before the start of the school year, opens district up to lawsuits, cause further attrition, parents opting to put their kids in Catholic school or homeschooling. We also know that people will remember that when there's another levy on the ballot, we need to support our schools. As parents, we're exhausted. We got 4 kids, so we're always exhausted. But we're exhausted with all the changes we've directed. We want normalcy and consistency for our children. The change to require masks for all students at this time. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me say this really quickly. Megan and I, just got a few quick things, but Megan and I just respectfully ask you take into account the long-term psychological, social, and mental well-being of our children and put that over politics. We request that you maintain your previously determined position to allow parents to make decisions on what is best for their child. Thank you, and go Bees.
I didn't need to break down my originally looking at the players, so I'm sitting there listening. I first want to commend Grace. I think she did a phenomenal job, and a lot of parents can't even come and speak their minds, and she's advocating for herself. And I hope everyone listens. That's a real, she talks to her first, but she's really impacted by it. You know, it's one thing to put a mask on your child and send them to school. She's telling you what it's like at school with these masks on. There's a big push right now in elementary schools to have these masks on their kids. Our elementary schools do not have air conditioning. They don't. It's been, I mean, you've been outside, it's hot. You want to send some parents want other parents to put a mask on their child when they don't want to do so. Joel earlier said when you call parents, you trust parents to give the correct information, and there should be a trust between the school board, teachers, parents. It's already come out that you trust us to make that decision. Don't take that away from us. It's trust the parents to make the best decision for their child. I've been sitting there listening to a lot of reasons as to why some parents want the mask to be mandatory. I've heard it's an inconvenience for working parents to have their child quarantined. It's about keeping grandma and grandpa safe, and obviously we all want that, but it's about other people. It's not about the child. You can make that decision to send your child with a mask on if that's what you choose to do. That's not about the child's safety, that's about everybody else's safety.
Kids shouldn't have to sacrifice for adults. Now, I don't know when that happened. As a parent, I would do anything for my child. It should not be the other way around. And we also talk about the kids being fearful of hurting grandma and grandpa and other people. We're the ones that put that fear in them. It's time to take that away.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Maria Mattis-Anagopoulos. I'm a heart failure cardiologist at Cleveland Clinic. I'm a parent of 2 children at Hilton Elementary. They have been doing the remote learning for the last year and a half. We had wonderful teachers who were very appreciative that that was an option. We're also very excited to go back to school next week. But we are also will be masking them, and we hope that the board takes all of the scientific information, and I wish we had a fact checker tonight, because not all facts that were presented tonight are accurate. So the Delta variant is here. It is very virulent. We are in worse shape now than we were last year when we sent our kids to school. 95% of people who are currently in this hospital have not been vaccinated, so we know vaccines work, but I'm not here to advocate vaccines. We know masking works, and I know people talked about having different bacteria on masks. Yes, that is very true if you don't use masks appropriately, if you don't wash them after you don't change them 2 times a day. You know, I wear masks all day long. I do your heart catheterization with a mask. I can breathe just fine. So, you know, we're very excited to go back to school. But we are hoping that the school board understands it's so important for kids to wear masks, you know, to help avoid the spread of this virus. We don't want our kids to have the virus. We don't want you to have the virus, because it is a long-term problem. It will be a chronic problem that you will live with for the rest of your life. Yes, 99% of people will do fine. I have a cold, I felt fine, no big deal. But talk to the, you know, we can't talk to that 633,000 people that have died from the virus already. So, you know, it's not fair to say that, you know, I'm not going to do this with a greater good. That's why we're masking. That's why we're doing the vaccines. We're doing it for the greater good of society. That's why we're trying to help each other. And we are all trying to be the best community that we can by trying to help each other. So I didn't really have anything else prepared other than we really just want our kids to be safe. And I do want everyone to have a choice. But at this point, we are in the middle of a pandemic where millions of people have died. And I think the safest thing is to allow our children to be masked. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Miller. I live at 4850 Stillwater. First, I want to start by saying that COVID can make them be very hard. They called us and said that I should bring my kids to the hospital and prepare them to say goodbye to their dad. So you would think that I would be on the side of let's mask everybody up. It's one thing that my kids have told me. We were more anxious in school wearing a mask than they were having to have to go say goodbye to their dad. Luckily, my husband made it. Long COVID, just today, in fact, was said that he is 100% done. Person here who wrote data and research at you, but it becomes meaningless when we choose to put validation with our political parties. So it's useless to do it tonight. And I've heard a lot of people say about we should be inclusive and say give every child should have a right to school. We're not even a peanut free school. So that is going to be a one. What matters is that we prioritize the mental health of our children at the same level as their physical health. Our children are suffering mentally. Anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts have gone through the roof since the pandemic has begun. Every year we hold our love rally and we run up the hill for mental health. We check that box, we did it, mental health, we did it, and we go back and put it on the back burner. If you truly believe mental health is as important as physical health, We will keep masks optional and let parents guide their children in what's best for them. The people who know their child the best guide them through this decision. Many children feel anxiety and isolation wearing a mask, all things that trigger mental health issues. We can help prevent that by giving them a little bit of control. As promised, I'm not going to give you one-sided data, but I can tell you this. There's not a single person in this room that has any data or research that shows teenage COVID deaths outpace teenage success. Not one person. We truly believe mental wellness is equally important as physical wellness, and let's keep masks out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rob Still. At 807-6 Twin Oaks. Father of 8. Yes, we figured out how it works. So we have 8. 3 of my youngest are in the school district. I myself, I'm an alumni of this district, and I cherish it. And I'm currently working at setting up alumni pep bands, for all the alumni that have gone through March Band. It's in the works. So I have a heritage, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come forward and talk to you about this issue. I want to just quickly say thank you to the young lady, I think her name was Grace, who had enough strength and courage to come forward and share what she has gone through. Because she has gone through very similar experiences to my children through the last year. And it took a lot of courage. So we're in uncharted waters. We can all agree to it, all of us. This is all uncharted, everybody. How we steer the ships in our own, we make decisions in our homes, in our communities, and nation. It's different. So with that said, my heart is out there when you have to make the decision. But I would like, and I had so much ready to go, and I had so many things to say, but I can only now just reduce it to a question. When was going to school ever really quote unquote safe? And we've all picked up kids who've been sick. We've all picked up kids that were hurt in school, gym, whatever. We've all had it, and even emotional pain and hurt that happens at school. So has school really ever been safe? And I say that in quotations of, safe in the sense that daily risk is part of our lives, all of us. And our children must learn that at a young age. Just getting on the bus is a risk. And as you were growing up, you may have suffered getting sick or getting hurt at school, and so forth. We've all had it. So here we are meeting, and we're meeting basically about a decision concerning the virus. That's what this is all about. If you go on a coronavirus, I'm back up. As of today, the age group of 19 and younger. Do you know what percentage of mortality is in that age group in Ohio? Does anybody know? 0. My family and I went through COVID in November of 2020. Obviously, the older kids don't live in our home, but they also got it at a birthday party. And it came to our house. We were expecting it. I prepared my family. I don't think we're going to get away from this. I'm going to get it. Not that we weren't applying safety measures that we always apply. This is a virus. We know about viruses. Here we're dealing with a virus that kills 0%. I don't miss, I know there have been children that have died, but it's an immeasurable number. minuscule those that perish. So we went through it. No one in my house was hospitalized. My wife and I had the worst symptoms. A couple of days were over when my kids had it. No, we had antibodies are great. We are clinically immune. You know, I'm almost done. I would like to ask a question, is it possible? I'm no expert. I'm working there. Is it possible our community's already herd immunity? Just pose the question. With natural immunity and all the vaccinations, are we already in that point? If so, I hope that that guides your decision. Families asking school to allow the moms and dads in these communities to make the decision to mask our children, our choice. And celebrate and encourage those that feel like it's a risk to their family to mask their children and mask themselves. But many of the parents that are fearful of kids bringing it home from school do go shopping. They do grab gas pumps. We are at risk no matter where we go. And we put it heavy on our kids, and some very amazing things were said tonight about children. Ladies have responsibilities for children. So I guess I'll just leave it with this, that I believe that the school board will do the right thing and allow us to tell our kids how to be safe. Thank you.
My name is Mary Gibbons. I live at 572 Williams Drive, Martin Heights. I have prepared something, but I just want to say, kind of flabbergasted that we have medical professionals talk about literally taking blood of COVID patients, and people laugh at that. That's like blows my mind. I don't understand why we're not listening to medical experts. I'm confused. I'm honestly confused. Just it blows my mind. I also want to say that both my kids stayed home for a good portion of the year last year. I sent them back to school at the end of the year. They not one time complained about wearing a mask. They were so excited to be back to school with their friends. I can guarantee Cleveland Public City Schools stayed home all last year. Their kids are excited to go to school, whether they're wearing the mask or not, because they want to be in school. I can also say that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so flabbergasted right now. Like, what's happening? I have two children in the district. One is in fifth grade, one is in third grade. They're unable to get vaccinated this time. I'm here to ask that we mandate masks in our schools in order for our kids to be educated in an environment that promotes their health. I'm not sure when this issue became political, but it is not a political issue. It is not a ideological issue. It is solely a medical issue. We have people that study medicine, that are epidemiologists. This is all they do. This is all they do. And they are recommending masks in schools. In the midst of things happen, yes, the coronavirus has changed. The Delta variant is different. It is now affecting children. It may not affect your child. Maybe one child dies. If we can prevent that child from dying by putting a mask on our face, I don't understand where the empathy in the world is gone. This is ridiculous. I think we can all agree that we want things to be normal. No one wants to be married to things. It's not fun. However, things are not normal. They are not back to normal. Our daily cases are higher than they were last August. People laugh. It's data. Collect the data. People are collecting it constantly. Our state is only 47% vaccinated. Yes, we may be 62% vaccinated right, but all our kids play sports against other districts, other areas, where their kids and their families we have these level of vaccination. And we just had football players who before school started get COVID. School hasn't even started yet. The American Academy of Pediatrics says the Delta strain is now affecting kids more than previous strains, with 94,000 cases added in the past week alone. The CDC, the AP, the ODH, the CCDH are all medical associations recommending universally wear masks for all teachers, staff, and visitors, along with the later prevention other prevention strategies we are. Why are we not listening to medical professionals who are trained in keeping us safe,
setting these barriers, collecting data on the constant reading, constant harm of COVID. It's not the same thing as it was last year. We all get our kids vaccinated for every other thing. It's not political. This is your health and wellness. Why should we risk the health and safety of our children when we can do something so simple as wear a mask in school? The goal of this war should be to keep our kids safe and to keep them in school. The way we can do it is very straightforward. We put a mask on our face, we hand wash, hand sanitize, more strictly cleaning protocols and social distancing. Once again, my kids do not have the ability at this time to receive the vaccine, and the only way I can protect them is by masking them and reminding them to wash their hands and use sanitizer. Then I keep them indoors. And protect my children while they are at school, because they have a right to education. I'm actually disheartened that we need to be here to plead for what seems to be such an easy fix in order to keep our kids and community safe. Please, listen to the medical expert. Please. Thank you.
And I we have her here, so she helps us maybe so I'm here to advocate for an important act in schools, such as those 12 and under, whose children 12 and under do not yet have access to be vaccinated. The absence of an access requirement for all children. At least 81 children in the U.S. died of COVID between March and July, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And many factors born with the situation like it's going to get worse. The Delta variant affects kids more than previous strains of life. The American Academy of Pediatrics noted presenting cases the last week of July. Due to the Delta variant, I believe it is imperative now more than ever to require students to be masked. All students deserve a safe learning environment. Awareness for some years, not working from home on we're doing that at work. We achieve this by implementing layered prevention strategies include masks. With the surge of COVID cases, sending 20+ unvaccinated kids into a classroom without masks or updated ventilation systems in elementary schools is not. Our families have taken every precaution to protect our kids since the beginning of the pandemic. Masks add an important measure of protection for our children and are simple, reasonable precautions safe to protect our students. I strongly feel that masks need to be worn indoors until all students have time to be masked. Masking and Catholic keep the recommendations and the recommended guidelines. Last year we followed the science and our kids to school with masks and followed the guidelines that are set away. Let's continue to mask to keep our kids safe, healthy, and school.
I'm Laura Putnam. I'm with Laura Putnam. I want to start by saying my mom died this year. I had COVID. My son had COVID. And he's that gentleman, 2 people down from me. He now doesn't have taste or smell even now. He had it in January. And I worry what that does to his brain. I don't know what that means down the road. If something's damaged in there, I have no idea. But that being said, I have to say I'm tired. I'm tired of the conflicting science. I'm tired of the faceless needs. I'm tired of the parents who shout the loudest or the longest, getting all the attention. But mostly, I am tired of fighting. I am tired of the nastiness. I am tired of the political divide. We should be better than this. Our children deserve better than this. And I'm not just talking to the board, y'all know that. I'm talking to everybody. Compromise, empathy, patience, a plan. Hopefully we can all agree on these admirable concepts. Compromise. You've heard enough opinions and I'm not going to give you mine. Besides that, I'm usually right. I'm not just talking about my hair. But more than that, it's not about what I want. It's not about just about what I want, I should say. I do think compromise on masks are in order.
I mean, this lovely lady right here started with, perhaps we could start on a temporary basis. See how many people are following social rules, let's just put it that way, okay? We can have mandatory for unvaccinated. We can have optional for those willing to prove their vaccination. There's ways we could work this out where it doesn't have to be black or white. Compromise is more complicated, yes, but it's not impossible. And of course, as Joel pointed out, it is important to note that HB 244 does not go into effect until October 13th, so it's possible for the next 2 months. And it is not a violation of HIPAA for the school to ask if the students vaccinated. They don't have an answer. Empathy. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. And everyone's perception is their reality. Recognize their concerns, even if you do not share them. Find solutions to mitigate those concerns as much as possible, because we all deserve to be heard. Patience. Things will change. More people are starting to get vaccinated. Young children should be able to get vaccinated in short order. The FDA hopefully will approve the vaccine in short order. Masks will not be forever. But whatever you decide, we need a comprehensive and detailed and inclusive plan based on the best science and law as is today, not October, as is today. A plan that will handle the questions, concerns, and fallout of your decisions. And not only consider the opinions of the parents, but the observations of the teachers, the administrators, and the support staff in our district. After all, it is they who have been on the front lines for over a year, will try their best to educate our children in our buildings, often are crowded and hot, old buildings. Their opinion should count the most. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Galick. I live on Mark Drive in Rocky Heights. This is actually the third time I've addressed the board of education after wear masks in schools. Since I first spoke at the end of June, health experts from the Centers for Disease Control, American Academy of Pediatrics, Ohio Department of Health, and Cuyahoga County Board of Health have all recommended students, teachers, and staff wear masks inside school buildings regardless of vaccination status. So again, I ask our district to follow the advice of health experts and require masks in schools. Tonight, you've heard from many parents with the same message as me. But for every parent that's spoken tonight, others could not be here, either because of work, travel, or volunteer obligations that kept them away. Nearly 200 signed a petition in favor of masks in our district. Some of these parents have reached out to me in messages and at community events to share their stories. Some have immunocompromised children that are worried could become sick. Some have children they desperately want to vaccinate but aren't eligible. Some are concerned their children will be bullied if they're the only ones wearing a mask in class. Some want to educate their children remotely, but we're told there's no online option this year. Some wonder what will happen if an outbreak or quarantine sends their child home for days with limited classroom support. Others worry if their child brings home a deadly variant, it could kill someone in their household who is immunocompromised. Others still have kids who have already graduated, but just don't want to see their local schools ignore the advice of health experts. The members of the board and the administration already know these stories. Their inboxes are overflowing with them, and I'm sure these stories break your hearts. They break my heart. So please know that for every parent you see here tonight begging this district to follow the science and protect the health and safety of our children, there are even more watching at home, hoping and praying our schools do the right thing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alice. If you're new to see, I live in Pineview, Oval, and Braxville.
Good evening, everyone. I had a longer statement prepared, but in the interest of everyone getting hopefully home in time for their kids' bedtime, I shortened it while I was waiting in line. Open for applause then. I want to first say thank you for this forum tonight. I appreciate you opening the floor to hear from concerned parents. I'm sure this isn't easy. I can tell it's not easy for anyone here. I'm a relatively new parent in the district. My oldest son will be going into the first grade this fall. And this meeting, where we can hear from everyone who wants to be heard, makes me proud to be a member of this school district. My children are too young to be vaccinated. Their summer camp has required masks when indoors all summer, and they understand that the purpose is not only to protect them, but also to protect their friends and family. I'm asking you to follow the guidance of the Ohio Department of Health, the CDC, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and mandate masks for students at least until conditions change. These organizations exist to promote public safety, and they all agree that requiring masks while indoors for our children is key in the effort to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Let's listen to the experts for the sake of our children and our community. Finally, I want to say we've heard a lot of talk about God and praying tonight. I pray for the end of the pandemic. I pray that no one here suffers from this disease, and I thank God for science, for doctors, for medicine, and I thank God for a safe learning environment for our children. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tommy Putnam, I'm a senior here at BBH, and I wasn't planning on talking tonight. After hearing probably the first 10 people go up, and honestly hearing the first 10 minutes of this meeting, I chose I was going to. I'm an active member of the school. I'm in music and motion, I'm on the baseball team. I'm active in many clubs. I perform on the stage that you guys are at right now. And played in stadiums that you guys pass all the way here. That being said, I'm also involved in a lot of things outside of school. I work at a horse farm or a ranch. I am part of a very big travel team. So I hear a lot of opinions of masks, no masks, everything like that. I'm not here to argue whether or not we should have masks or whether or not we shouldn't. Quite frankly, I don't have an opinion. I've been vaccinated. Everyone that I would have masked up for, I can't anymore because they've already passed away. The only reason I bring that up is because going back to people bullying other people, I've had a student tell me your grandma was gonna die anyway. COVID or no COVID, she was gonna die, so it doesn't matter. And I feel that stems from parents on both sides. I'm tired of the hypocrisy from both sides. I hear members of the board say things like they're disgusted and they are not happy with how the parents are acting, but then I hear and see them say the exact same things, or do the exact same things. Parents on both sides have stood up to that comment and they have clapped, but then even walking down this aisle, I've heard both people who are for masks and against masks laughing at other people, the same people that stood up and clapped for that statement, even after the statement was made. And as a student in BBHCSD, I feel like most of us just want to have a normal experience. Now, I'm not even talking about masks or no masks. I'm talking about the way that our influences are acting. We have our parents telling us we can't hang out with other kids because they got into a fight with another parent. We have parents not sending other kids to school, not giving them the normal life they want. We have parents pushing kids into places where they aren't comfortable because they want to be seen as socially accepted. And it's none of that is normal. none of that, masks or no masks, that's the way we are acting is not normal. And I agree with what Grace Doppler said. I agree with most of what Grace Doppler said in where most of us are anxious. I have anxiety. It's just the truth. And most of my anxiety at this point does not stand for masks, but it stands from going to school and wondering how I'm going to be judged by my parents' political opinions, by my other students' political opinions. And we are being molded into people that don't hear other people out, that just sit there and do what they're told, not just from a social standpoint, on both sides. And it's exhausting to us students because we don't have the right mindset to sit there and learn when we're worrying about what's on our TV screens, either Fox News or CNN, it doesn't matter. Both sides, it's just, we're tired of the fighting and the arguing, and we just want to have a normal high school. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Barlow. I have two children in the district and middle school. I'm here to voice my concern over how the upcoming school year will be conducted. I would like to ensure that masks and vaccines are voluntary and learning is in person 5 days a week. In general, there is not good science surrounding COVID and related issues such as mask wearing. There certainly are not long-term studies of vaccines and its effects. By definition, there has not been sufficient time to conduct such studies. There are not well-conducted scientific studies to support that masks are effective or ineffective. We are contrary to that. However, common sense will indicate that the inconsistent, incorrect wearing, contamination/dirty masks rendered their use ineffective for the vast majority of children, i.e. when children all sit at lunch or eating just inches from one another, touching their masks all day, or wearing their masks appropriately, are all practical examples of the farce of mask wearing in school. I think parents should have a final say in their children, whether or not their children wear masks in school. I fully support anyone else's decision to have their child wear a mask, but I would also like to have the same courtesy extended to me and the freedom to choose not to force my child to wear a mask in school. I fundamentally disagree with the government, the state, employers, or anyone else forcing an individual to take a vaccine. In particular, a vaccine such as the COVID vaccine, which is experimental and for largely non-life threatening virus. 99% or more of people who have gotten COVID have it. So I have these prepared remarks. Obviously, so I'll skip some of them. I don't think that children are being affected. So I would like to address the science. We hear that constantly thrown out. So what my approach to that was to ask this board for the science. So I asked Mr. Peterson to provide me with the science that is used. So we sent me a couple studies, one of which was basically an aggregation of other studies. The one study concluded, quote, overall, this is from the board, overall direct evidence of the efficacy of mask use is supported, but inconclusive. Since there are no randomized controlled trials, only one observational trial, and unclear evidence from other respiratory illnesses, we will need to look at a wider body of evidence. That is directly from the study that you sent. So again, I think to stay up here, what the science on both sides is what has people really frustrated and they're really tired. There is not appropriately conducted science. I want to stick to my remarks before I go. So I think that we have a fundamental problem in society with the scientific method. There is a fundamental misunderstanding of what happens. And we are not using the scientific method. We are garbage studies half the time. They're not randomized control studies. They have poor
participants or their multivariate problems that these studies are not addressing appropriately. So, you know, I would like to address the secondary issue to Ms. Maxwell and the other people's points here. And that is, several weeks ago, Mr. Peterson's Facebook page was also brought to my attention. And I went for myself to look at what was there. And I was very troubled by myself, which I would deem to be demeaning and hateful political rhetoric that I think is over the top for an elected member of the school. His use of ad hominem attacks and memes to lash out and impugn and demean whole groups of people in this community contributes to the division and discord. I was further troubled by Mr. Peterson's demeanor in front of the issue. He was unapologetic. Further, he could not see the issue with his brother when I spoke to him personally. On the other hand, I appreciate Mr. Peterson's transparency. I at least now know precisely what kind of individual he is and how he thinks. I am a staunch free speech advocate, in particular for the most vulgar, offensive, and political speech, as it is the only speech that needs to be protected. Unoffensive, uncontroversial speech, by definition, needs little protection. So I'm here to offer a counterbalance to Mr. Peterson's speech. It's my opinion that as an elected official who has a direct effect on the people of this community, as a representative republic, not a direct democracy. Hence, the board is elected to represent us. They're not a direct democracy, so we don't get to vote on what they want. We elect them. So I just think that it demonstrates that you cannot be trusted to fairly represent all the people of this community. I would also like to voice my concern with the SEL curriculum and the universal screener test administered to students of the district annually. I have been surprised that many parents are unfamiliar with the fact that the universal screener is a mental health evaluation. I do not trust the security of this information, nor do I trust the data, that the data will not be misused in the future. At the very least, I would like to see the district make the universal screener an opt-in program rather than opt-out, or a single and perpetual opt-out. Or Anthony Fauci, when the director of the CDC, Anthony Fauci, talks about how vaccines are going to affect whether the virus mutates or not, that's just fundamentally wrong. Everyone knows that. Vaccines have no effect on a virus mutating. A virus is going to do what it's going to do, whether. No, but who is?
Let's
So, but this is one of the problems. So we cannot, as a lot of us, we can't have these debates without feeling like we're personally attacking them. I have tried to be extremely respectful to people during this pandemic and their different perspectives, because I think that people on both sides of this fundamentally want what's best for other people, and they fundamentally have a different perspective. I personally prefer liberty to safety. I do not want safety over liberty. And I specifically heard that today. I understand that's an uncomfortable thing to say. That doesn't mean that I don't see anybody else die. I don't see, if we can save one child, that is a false dichotomy. So to me, I think that we should have choice. I would prefer to see the school district, if people want to go full remote, have that and have full in-person. And those are your two options that give people the level of protection that they want. Or have people wear masks, but have parents that include wear masks. People should have the choice. But we should try not to attack one another personally when we disagree. But there are legitimate, fundamental disagreements on both sides of this issue. And the experts in this world have been getting it wrong consistently for years. Why is autism spiking? Why are so many diseases spiking? No one ever wants to say, what are the experts on that? So we need to try to bring the rhetoric down, but it's very hard when the other side attacks you personally and insinuate that you want to see people die. That is not what I want to see.
but I think that we see that children are not largely affected by this. And so they should go to school freely, and it should be their choice whether to mask or whether to vaccine. Thank you very much.
My name is Mike Adler, I live in Metro. We've heard tonight from medical professionals, both for and against masking. Both presented a list of statistics. I find all of the constant changes and conflicting information to be very hard to navigate. But this is what I do know. In science, only a double-blind study performed by a non-vested interest recognized as legitimate science-based study. That said, before a forced mask mandate is placed, I'm asking that such a factual study is presented. Again, a study that isn't done by someone who stands to gain in any way. I don't want to hear CNN, I don't want to hear Facebook, I want to hear a factual, double-blind, non-vested party study. Numbers and statistics can easily be skewed. I do know this firsthand from the loss of a loved one, witnessing them having COVID-19 listed as a cause of death when there were no COVID symptoms ever presented or any tests ever being performed on them. There's people making money on that, and that's sad reality. So numbers are skewed. Also, the CDC has openly stated that they're not currently tracking COVID cases of vaccinated people that are hospitalized. So it makes sense that 95% of hospital admitted COVID cases are unvaccinated because that's the only ones currently being counted. So if your answer to me is simply just trust the government, trust their statistics or suggestions, then I would like to refer you to a little something called the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Look it up. While history is not a very popular or important subject anymore, it's still a valuable source for learning. So I just respectfully ask again, if the school board is going to make this very important decision on my behalf for my children, before mandatory masking is made policy, please just provide me a legitimate double-blind study by a non-vested interest proving the benefit of masking. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Greg Cunningham, 7690 Winding Way, Brexville. I'm going to make a couple of quick observations because we've heard a lot of people speak on both sides of the issue. I am for masking to be optional, vaccines to be optional. But I have heard tonight that this is not political. Who in here really truly believes that this has not become political? It is political. And everybody keeps touting out the CDC, and I've worked in Washington, by the way, that the CDC and the American Pediatrics Association, they are political organizations. And many members of the Pediatric Association who are pediatricians do not agree with masks. That is a fact. So to keep touting organizations and the ODH and all these organizations that they think this should be done, it is political. And that's the way this system has worked. And that's the way this virus has been used to procure political outcomes. Politicians do not want this to go away. They don't want it to go away because they get power from it. A politician voting to get rid of power is like a turkey voting for Thanksgiving. It is not going to happen. And this comment about, we keep hearing about settled science. By definition, science is never settled. On top of that, we used to do things, and you can look this up, we used to spray our kids with DDT so that they would be safe. What things today we would be considered insanity. And a generation from now, this will be considered insanity. This has become the biggest political issue of our time. And to say it's not political, to say that human rights don't matter, they do matter. You, the government, the state, does not own my children. Our family makes our decisions, and we don't want you or any politician making decisions for us ever again.
You have been completely discredited with the vast majority of the medical community, given this false pandemic. People have died from this, yes, absolutely. But the CDC themselves have said 6% of the people of the total number that died from COVID, not with COVID. Which means if you had cancer or heart disease or diabetes, and had COVID, you were listed as part of the total death. That is fraudulent. We didn't do that for any other disease. And finally, I've been a fitness trainer for 31 years. I've trained and done over 55,000 individual workouts with clients. And yet I go out here and you got all your machines, all your vending machines, all your stuff filled with sugar and crap and all this stuff that you give out to these kids at lunch. And 70% of the diseases in this country, 70% of chronic disease is preventable by proper nutrition and proper fitness. And you're worried about a 6% total, but the rest of the health of your students, our children, doesn't matter. There's a little hypocrisy going on here. So don't tell us that it's not political. It is political. And if there's not a resolution to this, then there will be a political solution. Final comment, Mr. Peters. I agree with several people who have spoken here tonight. I too have viewed your Facebook page, and I happen to agree with Patrick. I at least salute you, sir, for putting out what you believe to be out there. I think more people should do it. But I will say that I found offensive your comments to people with whom you disagree. You made numerous things on there about people who said, people who didn't agree with you politically. Very nasty. And you represent this school district. And incidentally, I hate to break it to you, but the vast majority of Brexville and Broadview Heights does not agree with your politics, sir. That's a fact. If you don't represent us, and if you don't represent us, you don't belong on that board. That are deplorable. Black Lives Matter is a racist, anti-family organization, and most people are afraid to say it, but I'm not. I don't know what your philosophy is in total, but if it represents anything that you've been posted online, I have no idea how you remain in office. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Melanie Karen, and I'm 8552 Trail. Now I just have one kid. For kids to survive just another year with masks, right? But it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. We asked them to do other things. They've sacrificed quite a bit the last 18 months. I really just want to remind you, based on your decisions that you have made over the last year, of what they sacrificed. Because they're being asked to sacrifice again. We used the heat map, remember that, to determine whether we were going to school or not, and we determined that we were going to high school. 60% of schools in the state of Ohio went back 5 days. We did not. Then there was last minute derailment of our 5-day model in October. There were no back to school events and peer events, mass quarantine of healthy children. No students and families, or very few families in outdoor stadiums for fall sports. And we missed things like senior nights. We used plexiglass and kids got detentions for mask violations, no homecoming, no winter formal. We engaged in 100% virtual education. Remember that snowstorm we all lost power? That was really good education. No Valentine's Day prayers, no live concerts, and when there was concerts, the kids pulled their masks away so they could sing and breathe at the same time. That was fun. Limited attendance, no winter sports, or at least we couldn't go see them. No visits to Gada, mass day graduation, no end of year family celebration banquets. Kids could participate in events but not shake hands afterwards. Grown-ups did that. That was stupid. Massive frustration for families and teachers. I am a teacher in a neighboring district. And let me tell you, my biggest tool that I have at my disposal is observation and hearing my students.
I can tell when a student comes into the room immediately how they're thinking and feeling, whether they're having a good day or a bad day, when they're sitting at their desk, whether they understand, comprehend, or just frustrated. They look at each other for that feedback. I want to give them a voice. I cannot hear them. I wear a microphone, but I cannot hear my students. Our faces are powerful tools that we use for expression and understanding, and we went an entire year not understanding and hearing our students. There's a tremendous amount of hurt feelings, betrayal, in this, I just want to get out of here kind of mentality. I felt it as a teacher, and I know our students felt it. Was it worth it? Were all those different changes and mandates and things that we did? No, none of it. None of it mattered. Our kids still got COVID. None of them were hospitalized. They are not super spreaders. None of it mattered. None of it mattered. You making your kids wear masks will not matter. So let us decide. Here's what we do know using local data, which is what I've been preaching from the beginning. There was a massive uptick in absenteeism last year. AP scores dropped by 5%. Third grade reading proficiency dropped by 9% in high-grade districts like the rest of the place. And lastly, according to the Ohio Department of Education, our students have lost roughly 1/3 of their year's worth of learning. They didn't show that. Grown-ups showed that. Parents didn't show that. So I'm asking you to listen to parents. And not included in the report is missed memories, lost opportunities, all the things that we as grown-ups remember about school. They're gone. We will never recover them. So in this risk management equation, we have a track record to evaluate. We have local data to evaluate, and it's pretty visible. Nothing was gained, too much was lost, and parents have virtually no choice of voicing that. Lastly, I'm a proud parent of 2 athletes. One's a football player, the other's a gymnast. Hopefully one day she'll be a state-bound gymnast, right? Both are far greater risks to ending up in the hospital with life-threatening injuries than COVID. And I'm not here to ask for permission tonight, whether Luke can play or Rachel can play. That's on me. That's what we're asking. Let it be on us. We will take that responsibility. So can our kids survive another year? I'm not even going to answer that question. Neither should you. We shouldn't be about survival. We should be about thriving. And that is what they have done all. They're doing it, and they can do it. When anything happens, it falls on me. Because I'm the mom. Thank you.
I have 2 daughters, one at high school, one at middle school, and one graduated from BBHCSD last year. There are liars, damn liars, and statistics, Mark Twain. He who would sacrifice a little liberty for a little safety deserves neither liberty nor safety. Our jobs as educators, community leaders, and parents has never been more complex or more important. And the most profound and lasting way we teach our children is by the example we set as adults with how we conduct ourselves in public and private spaces dealing with difficult and complex issues. Regarding our collective behavior over this past difficult and stressful months, what grade would each person in this room give us at this point? If you were honest with yourself. I would give us a complete and utter failure. We only need to look in the mirror and in this very room to understand why our children struggle so much with these issues in cyberbullying and peer pressure. There are social media screenshots circulating around of statements made online by a member of this board of education. A community leader is trusted with the fiduciary responsibility to oversee the education of our community's children, where this person proclaimed their hope that a certain segment of the community who had a differing point of view or political leanings died if they didn't see things their way. Astonishing. We should all of us, including me, I've done some things too, should be ashamed of ourselves. We should instead have a shared goal to teach our children critical thinking and problem solving skills, to respond appropriately to bullies and bullying behavior, to God forbid, not use bullying behavior and tactics, to be independent thinkers and to resist peer pressure to just go along with the crowd. Unfortunately, very few adults can demonstrate any of these skills right now. There is no such thing as purely settled science. That is absolutely true, especially regarding something we know very little about. For example, the Delta variant. The accepted definition of science and the scientific method makes that impossible. It is ironic that our middle and high school students probably understand that better than we adults have recently shown. I am not a medical expert. I like to believe in medical experts, but I'm also a student of history, and it was less than 100 years ago that the accepted medical expert consensus that smoking tobacco cigarettes was good for you. There's science about the harms of masks and prolonged mask wearing and the inability of masks to stop virus spread before COVID ever came along. I have read the so-called scientific proof of the usefulness of masks directly at the CDC's website. Well, they're recommending, they must know something, let me read them. They're top. Their own documents claim their hypothesis that masks reduce viral spread is proven by lower death rates from COVID in countries with mask mandates. Yeah, you heard me right. The proof that relying on the mask to stop viral spread is a measure not directly related to their hypothesis. Trust me, you're high school students that you're responsible for educating, you see the flaw in that scientific reason. My point to the Board of Education is this: do what we train our students to do. Think critically, do your own homework. Don't be bullied or peer pressured into a position to just go along with the crowd. And for goodness sakes, don't be bullied yourself. Our system of government puts boards like you in place by design, so that people are close to their representatives, so that large government bureaucracies don't cram one-size-fits-all solutions that can't work in every situation. If you are just going to go rubber stamp what Washington, D.C., Ohio, or the county says we should do, without challenging their assumptions and using their own critical thinking skills, reading the logic to make a decision, then you all should resign now because you're screwed.
Thank you, Bernie. I gave her the 9-12-1 Silver Lane. Two boys both system here, and I'm going to be very brief because I think everything I wanted to say, somebody else said it, probably said it better. But I don't believe masks work. Well, how do I know that? We have doctors, we have people looking up stuff saying masks work, masks don't work. Well, the particle size of the virus goes right through the mask. You can blow cigarette smoke right through the mask. That's a very large particle size, smoke particle. They don't work. I mean, that's common sense. I'm not a doctor. You know, I have critical thinking capability. I can look, I can study, I can do things based on what I see. They had different beliefs than Mr. Peters. They strongly against probably everything that's supposedly he said on Facebook. But that's his prerogative to think that. My prerogative to think how I look at it. Okay, my opinion is masks don't work. I'd love to see the kids without the mask. I can see whether they're smiling, frowning, or giggling. You know, did I finally tell a funny joke? I can't tell them they have the mask on. You can't see anything they're doing. Okay. And I do want to agree with the former, one of the other speakers that, you know, did mention that study from Florida where they sent the mask in. And it was just one day, and it came back filled with bacteria and germs. I mean, that's not how we want to live. So I really want to say, don't live your life. Don't make our kids live their lives in fear, paranoia. That's all you hear on the media today. That's all you hear from the politicians. It's fear this, Delta variant, Lambda. Everything is about fear. Since when did Americans live their lives based on fear? We are not risk-averse people. We were the first people on the moon. We climbed on Everest. Yeah, that was Sir Edmund Hillary. England got there first. Okay, we are not risk-averse. We all drove here today in our cars. Okay, there's a chance, about 35,000 people die every year in car accidents. Okay, we are not risk averse people. We can figure out things that take risks. We went to school, some of us got degrees, got married, got kids, everything has an element of risk. We need to not fear, not be paranoid about COVID-19 or COVID-22 or Delta this or Lambda that. Because think about history. A lot of people have told us about the history. And what virus has survived longer than we did? Not the Spanish flu. It's gone. It attenuated. It got weaker. The Delta virus, yeah, the medical experts right now saying it's very transmissible. But if you look at the same graph, there's less deaths with the Delta virus. The virus is attenuating, becoming weaker. We have strong immune systems. We have the ability to eat right, to get strong, and to make wise decisions. And I implore the board that you make a wise decision and not mask up our kids. I want to see their smiles. I'm sure you do too. I can't tell anybody that's not wearing a mask. I can see two people. I know what their faces are saying. Everyone else, you can be smiling, you can be frowning. I have no idea what you're thinking. We're human beings. We interact with our face and our feelings. They don't cover our faces up. They don't do that. They need to come here to get good education, be happy, be freedom of Americans, based on America. God we trust, liberty, pluralism. Thank you for your time.
Planning board, we have my little arm, right? I'm not going to try and cover my whole ground. Actually, thanks here tonight. I'm here July, spoken favor of putting out some, something unfortunate. And honestly, I'm just really disappointed. You're right, we can't do it up on Friday. What we do know is that it has a case rate for what we've seen in South where they started schools up and we have some quarantine orange classes and shut down grades or advertising for over now. That's evidence. Not to say that it's outside, but it is that evidence of what could happen. And so I think that is something that we should consider what's happening on the ground. I don't have a lot of other things I want to say that I don't want to cover around people. The other thing that I am struck by is what I hear on the two sides. And what I hear a lot of in terms of closing the mask, closing vaccines, is a lot of me, I. And I think the responsibility here is to think about the community of schools. And frankly, I find it a little kind of disappointing putting these kids in school together, but we're only worried about our. Yes, obviously there's a person to it, but the decisions that have to be made here have to be about the entirety. So I hope that falls under consideration. And honestly, I'm just tired. Frankly, I had this something before. At this point, I'd rather move to negativity and anger on. And I really don't know. I hope that we recognize that the people who are recommending this, yes, they're political. Absolutely. If they were not political organizations, they'd probably mandate, quite frankly, imagine what you guys were tonight on a state and a national scale. The CDC is part of I don't think that will go very well. I think you guys remember, and I think most of us remember this, Dr. Atkins when the pandemic started, $900 deaths from people making the same
did all of it. I already kind of think Dan here's some stuff there.
I am a pediatrician specializing in developmental baby health pediatrics. I am a parent of 2 elementary school children, 4 and 9 years old. And I'm here today in support of universal vaccination. I appreciate you giving me the time to share my thoughts. As a developmental baby health pediatrician, I feel strongly that children need to be in school. But I also feel strongly that we need to do everything we can to keep them safe and keep them in school. Delta has really changed the landscape. It's highly transmissible. We're seeing increased rates in children. We're seeing that some children with long-term symptoms, and there have been children who have died. There's so much misinformation being shared right now, including tonight. It is especially difficult to navigate and know who to trust. There's good research and there's bad research. And it can be difficult to interpret and know which is which. I'm not going to provide more data tonight, because you have already heard plenty and have no way of fact checking which is correct. That being said, the leading scientific experts, both nationally and locally, are recommending universal masking based on the current scientific evidence as a whole, not for some 1 or 2 studies. These are individuals who have dedicated their entire careers to science, not people who are single experts. Masking is the most effective when all are masking. Furthermore, there's no legitimate evidence that masking is helpful. With the new quarantine guidelines, it seems that universal masking will keep more children in school, which I believe is the goal that we all have. While I understand that parents want to choose for their children, I would like to choose to keep my children and all children safe. And that is best done. Thank you very much.
My name is Olivia Cunningham. I'm 19. I reside at 7691 Lake Rexville. I was not planning on speaking tonight, but this is a great thing and chosen to be out here and speak to you. I'm a graduate in BBHCS of the iconic class of 2020. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge Grace Stockler and also Tom. Thank you so much for speaking up on behalf of your classmates and alumni. I know you are not alone in your experiences. I cannot tell you how much I related to what Grace and Michael have expressed as someone who has also been through the school district. As Ms. Mack very accurately stated, the amount of disrespect we've all shown each other is frankly disgusting. This disrespect, this intolerance has touched my own family, as I have lost relationships with close family members and friends because they were in disagreement about COVID and COVID protocols. And I'm sure that these same issues have impacted the relationships of every single person in this room tonight. And for that, I'm so very sorry to all of you. I do, like Grace and many others, single out my staff and students alike while in this district, and it's sad to me I can tell you the political views of countless students and staff members in our district. This is extremely inappropriate and should not have been so, and should not be so now on any part of political spectrum, as our teachers' political comments often absolutely nothing to do with the curriculum. I'm currently attending a university that I commute to from home, so I'm still a community member impacted by these decisions. To counterpart this in the district this year in middle school, I'd like to talk a little bit about my first year at college. We were obviously all masked, and as a private university, we made students expensive social distancing protocols, which is absolutely their right. It was my decision to attend it. But in my first year experience class, many students, including myself, were bringing out to share their struggles with anxiety and depression to COVID-19 and COVID-19 programs. They spoke about how lonely they were and how they had made no friends. This is a reality for so many students in this district and in colleges as well. I have never seen most of my classmates' faces, and I know that it's also the case for many students in this district as well. This is incredibly sad. I am asking time with all respect to those individual freedoms and allow the parents to choose what they feel is best for their child, whether that be masking or not masking the child. I am asking the people for their choice. I denounce ruling out of fear in this country and in this district. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Dr. Roy. Yeah, I am the local pediatrician in Northern Heights, on Center Road. I also am the director of outpatient medical education for the Children's Hospital, and I sit on the finance board of the University of Minnesota. I cannot agree more that we want to do everything we can to protect our children. However, the very discussion that becomes is what are we doing and is it actually effective? So I believe that this particular decision really burns down to our masks proving to be effective or not. If you look at all of the studies, and I have looked at almost all of the studies because I am responsible for the education of the next generation of pediatricians in America, the studies that support the usage of masks are all epidemiological studies that start with an assumption that the mask reduces a certain amount of the transmission, and therefore you can multiply that by a population based on what percentage of the population uses the mask and what percentage doesn't, and therefore assumes a certain protection. These studies do not in any way prove that the masks work. There has not been a single study that has shown that masks decrease the transmission of any viral infection, let alone COVID-19. And you agree that it is pretty much impossible to do a blinded, double-blind study on this subject. And so we have to rely on what we have. And the bottom line becomes that the masks have not been able to work. Now, why do the various organizations in America recommend masks? I suspect that we as Americans tend to be go-getters, and we tend to want to do something. And so there is a tendency in America that we want to do something about the problem, even if we don't know what to do, or whether or not we have any data that is effective. And so the CDC and the AAP feels the requirement necessary to recommend something, but yet based on the fact that the number of times that they have changed their recommendation clearly indicates to us that the data is not clear, and the data has not proven that any of the recommendations are actually correct. Now, if you look at the large meta picture of the entire world, countries that have had no regulation and no restrictions, such as Sweden, no mask mandate, no closure, or you compare it to countries that had minimum recommendations, such as Turkey, or you compare it to countries that had a reasonable number of closures and recommendations, such as ourselves, or finally, countries that had very, very strict requirements of their citizens, such as Great Britain. All of these countries have had the same outcome under COVID. We have had all had the same approximate number of deaths per million. We had all had the approximate safer infection rate. What does this tell us? It tells us that nothing we're doing actually matters. Nothing we're doing is actually fixing the problem. It's wise for us to understand that sometimes doing less is more. That if we don't really know what the information is, we are better off not doing anything until we have better information. And so I would, urge you to take this into account when you make your decision. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Houston. I live on Quail Run in Rocky Heights, and I am a sophomore at BBHCSD. Teachers year after year tell us that they care about us and that they care about our mental health. They tell us that their door is always open and that we can trust them with what's going on in our lives, in our families, and in our school. But over the past 18 months, I have seen and heard of the struggles that my peers have gone through, and despite what they said, the hands of the teachers, administrators, and counselors were tied. I, as well as all of my peers, lost a year and a half of our lives for something that is not a threat to the lives of children. I'm a basketball player and I love the game so much. I've had my fair share of injuries over the years, but losing playing basketball to COVID was worse than any injury I could ever get. Even if I never get to play the game again, I can be there to support my friends and the family that we have built in the game that's such as simple as basketball. We may be able to prevent children from dying by forcing masks on their face, but we are being prevented from living by the rules and restrictions being placed on us by the CDC and possibly the board members in front of us if they decide to force masks in schools this year. I understand and respect the opinions of the adults that spoke before me, but who better to decide whether or not masks should be an option or not than the children who will be forced to sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, if the board chooses to make masks mandated. We deserve a choice for whether or not we want to wear masks, play a sport, hang out with our friends, and it's not fair to anyone to take that choice away from us. Thank you.
Hello, board members. This is Nadia. My name is Laura Ruth Julius, and I reside at 8292 Overlook Avenue in Rocky Heights. Both my husband and I are lifelong residents of and graduates of Brexville Rocky Heights City School District. We have a college graduate that has returned to live with us. We have 2 middle school students, one that is 12 and is fully vaccinated, and one that is 10 that is not fully vaccinated. And we have 3 elderly parents that live in our childhood homes. We are all unequivocally in favor of following the strong recommendation to maximize protection from the highly transmissible Delta 5 variant of COVID-19 and prevent possibly spreading it to others. It is important to wear masks in indoor public settings and to maintain proper physical distancing regardless of vaccination status. The reason why my family is all in favor of universal masking in schools is because when my daughter was an infant, we almost lost her due to RSV, which was obtained inside her Montessori school, and it was a child that transmitted the virus to her because the child was sent to school on Tylenol when she was clearly had a fever. My daughter spent 7 days in ICU, and the doctor that admitted told us to admit her straight to the ICU. Is in Rocky Heights, and she has stated over and over how important it is for us to remain masked and how it is the community's responsibility to do this, because if we leave it to the individuals within the school district, we can't enforce it, and we're just going to snowball ourselves into a big issue. No one is up here arguing that the students need to wear shoes to school. They will continue to wear shoes to school. They should continue to wear masks to school. All of this messaging that we are getting has been noted time and time and time again. From the notable organizations is the World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Federation of Teachers, the Ohio Department of Health, the County Board of Health, the BEA, every single hospital system on the face of this planet. And I mean that quite literally. We as a sought after district in the community and state can see what others are doing and require universal masking with our publicly funded buildings to ensure that we are able to provide our students with the same heritage of excellence that we have built here. We built this together, and we need to get through this pandemic together. Our fine district has 3 bullet points hanging just about everywhere, and maybe we should consider applying to this issue. Be respectful, be responsible, and be ready to learn. Let us flatten that curve, not only for our children, but for their parents and their grandparents that live within this community or close by, and recognize that this is a public health crisis that is infected with politics and misinformation. In closing, I implore you to vote with your conscience, that you did what was within your power to help keep this community safe.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I just want to make a quick comment, and that is, I want to express appreciation for everyone who took the time out of their day to come here and to attend this meeting, for all of those who came up to the podium to speak and share your thoughts. It's much appreciated. I know it can be intimidating to come in front of a room full of people and share your thoughts. And also for all of the people who sent us emails. We received many emails that ran along the same lines of the comments today. The board appreciates all of that. And just so you're aware, this board is committed to engaging its public and hearing your voice. Regardless of how we end up tonight, we value your opinion and we value your voice. Originally, the plan from our district leadership was to not publicize this meeting and to not have public comment. The board overrode that decision. We were the ones who initiated the district email to inform everyone about this meeting. That also caused a generation of a lot of emails. We also insisted on public participation and removed the 30-minute time box to allow everyone to speak. And here we are at 9:15. And hopefully everybody had a chance to speak. And we didn't even cut you off at 3 minutes. So we do value your opinion. So thank you for showing up and thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Second March. Thank you very much. Okay.
I had a few comments. I wanted to thank everyone. And I just had a few comments myself. The fact that you're listening to everyone else. And as you noticed, probably I'm wearing masks inside the doors, despite the fact that I and everyone else in my family, including my kids, got a COVID vaccine months ago. Wearing masks isn't a big deal to me. However, I also have the luxury of not having to wear it for 7 or 8 hours a day while trying to teach or participate in class. I can only imagine how challenging it is for the teachers and the students to wear masks for such a long period of time. One's decision not to wear a mask or to have their child not wearing a mask can affect others, not just the unmasked person, although there seems to be some dispute about that. But I did want to make a note also that mandating masks for teachers and students essentially leaves those who have a hard time with masks as an option, but strongly encouraging and recommending mask wearing in the district caters to both those who want to use them as well as those who do not want to. And I wanted to follow up on some of the other comments that, we don't know the precise reasons behind everyone's health for themselves and for their children. Some of us are or live with immunocompromised family members, while others live with significant mental health issues. I can go on and on. Many of us wear masks simply out of consideration for others. So let's just do our best to model kindness, consideration, and open-mindedness for our kids here at school, in our district, at home, and in public. And then I also did want to note, and I know it's frustrating, but just like this pandemic keeps changing, we need to just be flexible and realize that district security protocols may be subject to change. That's all.
Okay, item 3.
If I may understand the comments as well. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. I know this was a very long meeting, so I appreciate those who were able to stay and continue to engage in intentional listening at this point. I know several of you are here and on one side, and others are involved on the other side. And so I think continuing to stay in this meeting is important and shows your commitment to the process.
As a parent of a second grader, my son is not eligible for the vaccine. And so it is my personal preference that the students who are ineligible for vaccines at this time are mandated to be masked. I also fully understand that there are no governmental mandates or board policy in place at this time that can require that. Again, I appreciate that these parents and community members, and especially the students who have chosen to raise their voice and attended tonight. It's really important to stay engaged. As several alumni have noted their status through email and through their speaking today, they are proud to come from this community and believe that the district has taught them to look out for one another. But what does that actually mean? Is that acknowledging a personal sacrifice for the greater good? Or is that the assumption that someone else will sacrifice to give up their position so you don't have to? So as we have conversations and others have spoken to, be mindful of where others are coming from and knowing that you have to approach that conversation as if you're asking to change as well. Teach our students to be future-ready, globally responsible citizens, and that means recognizing the importance of examining subjects from broad perspectives, collaborating with others, and understanding that one's personal position isn't the only position, even when it's uncomfortable. It is my hope that we will continue to recognize that we need to come together until all families have the option to make the appropriate choice for their children.
I'd like to say just one thing, and I've said it throughout my time on the board, and I will continue to say it as long as I am on the board. Our district is as good as it is because of the engagement of our parents with their children's education. I want to thank all of you, those that had to leave already, and those that are still here, for being engaged with their children's education. It makes our district one of the top districts in the state of Ohio. So thank you. All right, item number 3.
So I have to say, I think we all should have a chance to say something. Whenever I have a parent-teacher conference, I recognize the fact that the parent has the decision. My job is to recommend what's best for your children when I'm in that hat. And so I can know what's best. I have a master's degree in education. I can know, but I really respect the role of the parent. And so I understand, and I'm very respectful of people who want us to mandate masks. However, at the core of education is the respect for the child and the parent. And so I'm going to be very definitive with this. I don't want to mandate masks. That's not how education was set up in the 1920s, public education. When I first got on the board, we were talking about drug testing. It's not our role. All these things have been heaped upon us, and it's not okay. It's not our role to parent your children. It's your job. And so when we cross that line, we need to be held accountable. And, you know, this is an example of being held accountable. And I'm respectful of what you think, and you elected me here, but I have to tell you, what's really something we need to all think about is that in the end, like, what are we showing our children? And are we telling our children that their parents' voices don't matter anymore, and that we should do things the way that the teachers tell them to do, or, you know, government tells them to do? That's not, and, you know, maybe that's your way, and I'm respecting of that, but it's not my way, who was elected up here. And so I feel like, regardless of what my personal beliefs are, My job is to voice what I hope that I thought that I was elected to represent, and it was not to have my own personal opinion. It was to reflect yours. And so I believe that the majority of this district does not want me telling them what to do. Okay? I mean, no disrespect. No disrespect for everything that everybody said. But you can't go here.
I also, give closing, thoughts on this. And from a broad perspective, I'm very much in favor of choice, parent choice that was, if you dialed in last year with in person or not, it was about having choice, right? There was a remote option, trying to get choice for parents who wanted in person option. And I'm very much for choice. I'm really comfortable with having mask be optional at high school level, because that age group has the opportunity to get vaccinated if they so choose, and if they choose not to, then they're making a risk choice like that's okay. So I'm very good with that. You know, where I struggle, and this isn't to get into whether masks work or not, and all of the science, I'm going to pull back from all of that and just share from a pragmatic standpoint. If you were here from the beginning, I had some very pointed questions to Joelle about the quarantine process, and there's reason behind that. It's because the way the quarantine process is laid out, parents who want to have masks on their kids, they can do that. But unmasked kids, if they become infected, the contact tracing around them would equal even the mask out on quarantine. And because we don't have online learning, you're going to potentially have segments of our student body that are on extended quarantine out of the classroom and without an option to dial into synchronous learning. That concerns me. I have read and heard about, down south, they're ahead of us. Schools are in session, and there are cases where there's outbreaks, there are cases where there's high quarantine. So I'm very sensitive to that. I'm also very sensitive that this is hit at a time where we are just not in our new building yet, where we have more space and better ventilation. Instead, we're back in our old buildings with less space and older ventilation. All of that comes into play. So I'm very cognizant of that. And from a pragmatic standpoint, the masks at the elementary level, they would offer the opportunity to reduce the risk of having extended quarantines. So this is very difficult. I hear all of you. I thank you all for your emails. I know it's a difficult situation. I know for the parents who feel strongly about masking, you're not left a lot of great choices, because we can't offer online learning and virtual remote learning, and that's a very difficult situation. So what I would ask is that we pay really close attention to the numbers, not just in our district, but what's going on in other districts, what's going on down south. Let's see. I mean, last year pivoting between in-person, hybrid, virtual, that was it's a nightmare. Masks would be easier to pivot. So let's pay attention to what's going on and rely on our leadership to say, look, if this is starting to go sideways, if we're starting to get large numbers of quarantines and students quarantined, that we're ready to make an adjustment if the information coming in is saying, hey, we need to consider this. So that's where I would leave this is, let's pay close attention and monitor very closely what's going on in our schools, and not just ours, but others, and let's stay on task.
Okay, item number 3, superintendent's recommendations. Item A, we hire certified personnel.
It is not a consent agenda, so it's 3 separate votes.
Okay. Discussion. I'm sorry, I need a motion,
So,
discussion.
Sorry, who was the second? Mr. Dawson? We do roll call.
yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Item C, certified personnel recommendations, do you have a motion,
So moved.
discussion?
Any questions about any of the recommendations?
Roll call?
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Stay.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Item E, classified personnel recommendations.
So moved.
Discussion.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer? Mrs. Mack?
Stay.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Item 4, announcement of meetings, our next regular board meeting for August will be August 25th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the board office.
I have a question. Why are you?
I don't think I have the answer, but I don't feel comfortable voting on that.
Okay, item number 5. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion, roll call?
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer? Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Your turn.